Meta meltdown. Did Zuckerberg really burn 80 billion for nothing? Look, Zuck's making the classic successful founder mistake. He thinks his magical brain is what discovered the idea and made Facebook successful. In reality, he was reacting to the moment and got very lucky. His brain and development skills helped, but he has no grasp of the quantity of luck that led to his success. I mean, yeah, he made a website for rating the hotness of college girls and frickin' caught lightning in a jar to become a billionaire. But he's not some kind of frickin' tech visionary or genius. I don't know, it looks like it really was the Winklevoss's idea. Now those two have like the third biggest Bitcoin stash. They really were ahead of their time. You see, the secret to the Winklevoss's twins' wealth is through hard work and always being nice to Grandpa at family events. Yep, too damn right. Ugh, these people are hailed as tech leaders, and every time they reveal themselves to be little more than people who caught a lucky break and thereafter are stuck following trends forever in the vain hope that it will keep the line going up. It's stupid and wasteful, and I wish we could learn from this. They're supposedly the most brilliant innovators of our time, and their big idea is to steal our data so that they can sell ads. The most invasive unsecured wiretap operation in human history, all to gather data to market advertisements to us. And they still can't manage to find a single personalized ad suitable. Yeah, and then I look up something online and buy it, and then for the next 30 days I get ads about the same damn thing I've already bought. If it's smart enough to know that I'm looking for something, it should be smart enough to know I already bought it and don't need another one. Remember when there was an evaluation that they were going to be able to sell assets such as six-figure virtual homes to every user on Meta? It's just unbelievably bonkers how much they had their heads stuck up their own butts with this delusional project. It's like NFT real estate. It's especially funny because this was already done in like 2004 with Second Life. There was a period in Second Life where every company was opening a storefront there. And then people realized how much it sucks browsing a virtual environment, and that sort of virtual interaction feels even faker than a Skype call. And now, Second Life is just another damn crypto scam. I love how Zuck thought he was such a genius for coming up with the idea that everyone already got bored of 15 years prior. Zuck has shown he cannot build new, so he can only acquire. Look at Instagram and WhatsApp, and he'll copy their features, things like stories, reels, and threads. He probably did rip off the Winklevoss twins because it fits the pattern. These people, and all of these products have gradually gotten worse from their inception. He'll go down as a Thomas Edison figure, won't he? Good business acumen for a while, but really reliant on the genius of others to get there. I didn't get a job 5 or 6 years ago because in the final interview they asked me how I'd approach a strategy for the metaverse, and I said I wouldn't waste money on it because it would never take off. Time to sit back and wait for the "you were right" call to come in. And every candidate who told them what they wanted to hear got a big fat salary and all the perks. You just gotta tell people like that everything's great and suck in that sweet investment cash. Well, I don't mean to brag, actually I do, but nobody wanted that crap. You only needed to look at Second Life and where that wound up to see that the metaverse was doomed and pointless. They were late to the party with an idea that the very tiny niche of folks who might have wanted it before were already burnt out. Second Life tried to get into too many markets and self-deleted. Gambling and adult content bankrolled the place, and universities made it fun. So they cracked down on that stuff without getting fully rid of it either, and doubled the cost to universities without warning just when the end was warming up. Capitalism runs despite entrepreneurs and owners, not because of them. Look guys, hear me out. We all knew this was gonna flop. They could have spent like $100,000 on proper research to prove that nobody wanted it. Unfortunately, these kinds of folks only listen to research when it aligns with what they were gonna do in the first place. I can tell you from experience. If they'd done a good job, it might have worked. Second Life and VRC Chat prove that it can be done on a small scale. But what's weird is that the amount of money they invested resulted in incredibly little. It's like every single person they hired to work on the project decided to scam Meta and do as little as possible. They tried to force a future instead of finding one that people actually wanted. See also AI. 100% this. VR, AR, and XR is cool technology, and they did push the hardware forward, but like so many tech companies, it's like they wanted to conjure an iPhone movement from pure will alone. They couldn't be content with trying to find out what the tech was good at. They had to push some kind of dream that everyone, everywhere would be buying headsets and spending all their cash on microtransactions. Not that companies can't push certain visions and ideas to the public, but there are limits, guys, even for the richest companies. This is one of the highest profile examples yet. You know, I feel like if I cost my company 80 billion quid, I'd be packing my crap in a cardboard box the next day. Well, if I cost my company 80 billion, I'd assume I'd be leaving inside the box, not with it. Well, Meta is structured so that Zuck is the controlling shareholder. The only person who has the authority to fire Zuck is Zuck himself. I have only one response to this, and it is that of mild amusement. Look, I really want to find it funny, but I can't help but think that Zuck, the one responsible for this screw-up, will continue to be one of the richest people in the world after this. Meanwhile, tons of people hired to work on this thing are getting laid off. Billions wasted on creating a dystopian virtual world that nobody asked for. Look, I don't care if he renames it to Beta Cuck tomorrow and blows another few billions. What I care about is that it's making money by stealing our personal data and selling it to the highest bidders. Look, guys, it's obvious. People told Meta this, but they thought they could brute force it. VR as a form factor has deep and intractable bottlenecks that prevent mass market appeal. Oh, fancy boy here. Something that Meta thought they could change, and failed. The future, in my humble opinion, would put VR as a subset of AR, as that has a lot more potential real-world applications than total sensory VR, which should be a one more thing from an AR device. I guess it's hard for Mark to accept that all he's built in his life is an ad, hate, and addiction trap. Grrr, Zuckerberg deserves to fail. This was something nobody wanted and they burned through ungodly amounts of money, mainly due to ego, I think. Burn it all down. Look, guys, Facebook or Meta or whatever it's called can afford it. Starting in 2000, newspaper ads and classifieds began migrating to the internet. Ads and classifieds were a massive business, and network effects being what they are, Meta and Google dominate it now. Meta can throw billions down the drain because they'll make it right back from their advertising sales. Of course, letting two companies dominate ad sales that used to be spread across 10,000 newspapers large and small is another issue. Yep, the narrator's scared of that. Our society has made a choice to let Meta and Google do that as an effective duopoly. The project came in the worst possible time, it was too late to have an impact, and too early for the current technological possibilities. My guess is Zuckerberg was a fan of Ready Player One, saw it was a commercial success, and thought it was the future, so he rushed to be the first to implement the idea in real life. Look, guys, I know we're all enjoying gloating here, but I believe 80 billion is their total spent on VR, including R&D, studio acquisitions, content licensing, things like that. Contrary to what many people seem to believe, there's no application called Metaverse. The closest thing to this in Meta's ecosystem is an app called Horizon Worlds, which is indeed fairly rubbish, although some of the content like VR concerts are decent. Horizon Worlds is what's planned to be shut down, not all of Meta. It turns out stealing an idea doesn't make you a visionary. Oh, come on, big deal. Plenty more money where that came from. Meta will just sell data about your trips to the liquor store to your health insurance company. Yay! Look, people wanted the Matrix when you said metaverse, not you balancing a phone at the end of your nose. Well, I feel like it's obscene. Read Careless People by Sarah Wayne Williams if you want to understand something of the mentality of that little toe-rag Zuckerberg. Spoiler, it's worse than you think. People talk about wealth redistribution and having billionaires stopping hoarding their wealth. Well, that 80 billion was redistributed. 80 billion that went to middle-class workers, that went to factory workers that VR headsets were made in, to bricklayers that built the factories that make those things. Facebook guy literally just stopped hoarding 80 billion and sent it to regular folks. But Reddit isn't happy, I guess, and thinks the Facebook guy should have just left it in the bank. Are you under the impression that payroll accounted for all 80 billion invested? How much of that 80 billion was spent on acquisition, infrastructure, technology, and hardware? I'm not saying a significant portion didn't end up being spent on the people they employed, but it certainly wouldn't have been the majority. Most of the 80 billion likely ended up in the hands of the shareholders of other companies. I mean, sure, it got redistributed, but mainly to others who were already in the top 1% of wealth prior. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Look, I think Zuck is a horrible human being, but how many times does it need to be said? Meta spent $80 billion on their entire VR and AR platform and hardware development as a whole, not on Horizon. Still, an insane amount, but that's not what they spend on one platform that's now mothballed. The hardware market is still very much alive, and they still have the lion's share of that still relatively small market. For me, we're only a few iterations of the technology away before it goes mainstream, and Meta will likely be number one by a mile. That's one of the more extremely positive interpretations you could take, sure. For me, this news event happened in such silence that this topic was my first indication that Meta was being shut down. The commenter is right that people here do seem a bit determined to see this as a complete failure. I've done some brief headline scanning, and it seems that at least Meta is doing quite badly and shutting down lots of features. So not necessarily the complete destruction of Facebook, but could indicate that we're looking at anything from a slow collapse to something approaching what this last guy was talking about. Let's see what other people have to say. Schadenfreude for me. 80 billion wasted, and here I sit trying to save for retirement. I don't think I'll make it either. No one wanted some fake, stupid, corporate, gross VR world? Who'd have thunk it? My thoughts are thus. F Facebook, F Meta, and F Zuckerberg. Thank you. Oh, I wish that number had an extra 0 on the end. There are two, sometimes very different types of folks on marketing teams. Those who figure out what customers want, and those who convince customers what to want. You're supposed to listen to the first group before conceiving a product, and the second group after. Mark did it backwards. Hear me out. I think it was a successful venture. Does anyone even remember why the name change was implemented? You know, after a Facebook whistleblower took to Congress to talk about all the harm that Facebook and Instagram were causing, the really illegal and disgusting materials advertised and traded on the site, and the fact that Zuckerberg didn't want any of these studies coming out, he pivoted to a brand change so Facebook wouldn't be lumped in with teenage mental health issues, other people self-deleting due to cyberbullying, and traffickers. And guys, his tactic worked. Because here we are talking about the dud that Meta was, and it worked perfectly to distract from the absolute dumpster fire of illegal videos, photos, and manipulation that Facebook and Instagram are. 80 billion to crawl out from under being a bridge for traffickers and teenagers, 80 billion to crawl out from hosting millions of files of horrific videos or illegal videos, 80 billion to crawl out from letting people on Instagram engage in trafficking. Ask Zuckerberg if it was a waste of money. It's probably pocket change to stay out of prison for the charges he'd be up for. I hope they burn even more money on dumb stuff and then die. Mark really needs to find better ideas to steal instead of trying to make something. Stick to what you're good at. Almost all billionaires are incredibly lucky people with no more talent, intelligence, or perseverance than any of us. I'd argue they have a bit more perseverance sometimes. The 80 billion number is misleading, and everyone keeps repeating it. That budget covered all of Reality Labs, which includes Quest headsets, Ray-Ban smart glasses, AR research, and the Metaverse social platform. The Metaverse social app, Horizon Worlds, was a fraction of that 80 billion. What actually died is the idea that people want to hang out as legless avatars in a virtual office. The hardware side, Quest and smart glasses, are still very much alive and doing just fine. Meta just learned the expensive way that VR is a gaming and productivity tool, not a social network replacement. Second Life figured this out 20 years ago for free. That's not true at all. Billions of people actively use VR as a social tool, and that's only going to get more appealing as the tech gets better. I honestly don't know what side of this I'm on, guys. They didn't rebrand to Meta just for the metaverse. They rebranded because they purchased a number of companies like Instagram and WhatsApp, and this is more of an encompassing name that doesn't pigeonhole them into Facebook. The takeaway here is that those idiots have way too much money. Imagine the actual good that could have been done. It feels like when someone who thinks everyone must like them because look at all the things they got throws a huge party for themselves and nobody shows up. For 4.5 years. Oh, damn it, I never got to try it out. Oh, don't worry, nobody was trying it out. The metaverse bet was the most expensive panic move in tech history. Zuckerberg saw TikTok eating Instagram's lunch and thought, what if we just, leave this dimension entirely? 80 billion, and all they got was Horizon Worlds, which looked like a Wii game from 2007, but with worse social features. Meanwhile, TikTok kept growing, and Zuck eventually pivoted to AI, which is what he should have done from the start. But here's the contrarian take. Meta's not actually dumb. They accidentally built one of the world's largest AI research labs, FAIR, while chasing this metaverse. The GPU infrastructure they bought for VR rendering turned out to be exactly what you need for training AI models. They stumbled into the right position for the wrong reasons. The rename itself was smart branding. You see, Facebook the product is for your parents. Meta the company sounds like it builds the future. Perception matters when you're recruiting engineers. In short, a terrible strategic bet, accidentally great infrastructure investment, a solid rebrand. The universe has a weird sense of humor. Dude, are you AI? That just sounded like a robot stroking themselves. Hey, nobody knew what metaverse actually meant. They kept hyping it out and blowing it out of proportion without explaining what it actually was. It's insane what 80 billion could have bought instead. The UN said 6 billion would be enough to prevent world hunger and save millions from starvation and malnutrition. So it could have prevented all of that suffering for more than a decade. Our priorities as the human race are completely effed. Very few get insanely rich, while others starve and don't have clean water. You have to be a psychopath to think that's okay. 6 billion wouldn't have prevented world hunger. This has been debunked numerous times, and it's ridiculous to think that it would. Over the last 50 years, trillions have been spent in global aid, so if 6 billion is the fix, it would have been done a long time ago. World hunger doesn't even come down to money. It comes down to war, political corruption in dictatorship countries, lack of infrastructure and logistics in desolate countries. 6 billion wouldn't even cover the fuel cost to get the food delivered, let alone farmed, produced, and packaged. Well, that's a fun jump back to reality, isn't it? I'm sad. I'm so ugly that I wished to live as a crappy avatar. What hope is there for me now? JK, I'm actually gorgeous. The UN estimates that it would be about 90 billion annually over the next 5 years to eradicate world hunger. Okay, that seems more plausible. It shows where our priorities are that a business can just burn 80 billion in a crap product that no one wanted, but then we scoff at that UN proposal. Changing to Meta was as dumb as changing Google to Alphabet or Twitter to X. It's wild how people this out of touch can become this rich. I say as I type this into the phone that I'm addicted to. If you needed any more proof that these companies deserve to be taxed much harder, this is another one on the pile. The tech giants are sitting on mountains of assets to the point that they can hold a competition of who can starve regular people of computer hardware the most. Yet they clearly don't have any idea how to actually provide value to society. They clearly got rich not due to continued effort and good decision-making, but by being lucky with the right timing and then just being able to leverage their size to drown out competition. I say we tax the crap out of them, redistribute their hoards so that they can actually make people's lives better, and make them actually accountable to make good decisions again. It's no different to Microsoft spending billions on good quality software only to shut it down and throw it out 10 years later. Skype was amazing until Microsoft bought it. It's too late for me to go into how many other companies Microsoft bought, ruined, and killed. I had a Zoom call with someone who legitimately said, "I'm sorry, I don't know how this works, I normally use Skype." And frankly, that statement appalled me. Like it was a work thing. They were conducting the majority of their business on the long-dead Skype platform that was run into the ground by Microsoft and is now unsupported. And that, my friends, was more wild and surprising than any billionaire company doing the exact worst thing, as is basically business as usual by now. It just goes to show how uncompetitive and broken a market is when a company can mess up so badly and it doesn't even make a dent on their market share or profitability. Considering that the spend didn't jeopardize the future of the business, I think they clearly weren't committed enough to the vision. Maybe they should try harder the next time around. I think it's hilarious that people were actually buying plots of land in the metaverse. Well, that's a lot of money that could have gone to, at a minimum, say, dramatically improving the lives of their employees. Honestly, I think the biggest concern is the data collection. All those $80 billion probably came from selling people's personal information and identifying data to advertisers. Guys, it was 80 billion spent to make you forget about Cambridge Analytica. The metaverse wasn't the point. Distraction was. Should be obvious by now that he's not a good CEO. The thing he can do best is selling data of his customers. He's a stereotypical billionaire. All previous attempts at metaverse-like platforms failed for a lack of customer interest. It's not about the technology, it's about creating a value proposition that convinces customers to invest their time and money. Apparently, 80 billion wasn't enough to figure that out. Call me next time. I'll write a bunch of throwaway code for 39 billion. Honestly, it feels like one of the most expensive corporate identity crises of all time. They're called Meta, not because of the metaverse, but because their business model is selling their users' data, aka their metadata, guys. I'm sorry, what was that? I was thinking about something important. Oh god, all of these posts about people's data are making me remember all of those cringy posts. I declare that they cannot post my pictures. Guys, they were doing it anyway.
What's a telltale sign that someone is a selfish person? When conversations don't feel like conversations, they are one-sided talks about what they want, their thoughts, their life, their priorities, etc. When you are able to actually slip in a word, your words are used as transitions in their dialogue. No matter how you format your words, they all just add to the plot of that person's story. What you say and what you do are pawns in their game to be manipulated in a way that belittles your experiences, your actions, your opinions, and your choices. Something I personally want to add to this is most selfish people can't have conversations. I've noticed this with the girl I used to fool around with. She would try to make conversation by making it about me with, "What are you doing? How was your day?" But no matter what I responded with, it always got a 1 to 2 word answer. "That's cool. Interesting." That way they give you the illusion that they care, when in reality they just use you when they need you. They gladly take any favors you do for them, and when asked if you could reciprocate once, they get defensive or aggressive, and act like you're the selfish one for daring to expect something in return. It doesn't make you a bad person to expect reciprocation in a relationship with someone else, romantic or platonic. Relationships are give and take, and it makes them healthy. It's not entitlement to expect kindness if you give kindness. If you're the only one giving, you're being taken advantage of. And for clarification, for anyone who thinks doing something kind with the expectation to gain something from it can be manipulative, I'm not talking about narcissism and manipulation. I'm talking about the natural give and take in a relationship. It's not manipulative to expect certain things out of a relationship. Depending on the kind of relationship that is. The whole reason we make relationships is because they give us something, whether that be support, love, safety, or other advantages. It isn't a bad thing, it's a human thing. Typically with give and take, if you notice a pattern of one person consistently taking without giving, the one taking is the problem, not the one giving. The kind of people who use this as a manipulation tactic aren't the ones who stick around in a relationship for years, doing favors and kind things without being asked to. They're more than likely to do one favor and demand twice as much in return. Why do I know this? I've had these people in my life, which is what gives me the realization I'm commenting here. Yeah, I'm actually going through this with my roommate. She always asks for my help, expects me to walk her dog every day, constantly asks me to pay rent in advance even though I'm not getting any income for 3 weeks. Yes, she asked me to pay a second rent just a week after the last. She never thanks me for walking the dog. Any advance payment? No thanks there either. She'll just keep asking as if I'm her bank account and then get angry when I'm unable to pay. Last week she asked me to cook extra food because we had guests coming over and she threw a fit because I used beans. It's not that she or anyone else can't eat beans, it was just her dislike of the day. She had eaten those same beans and other dishes and liked it. I had put so much effort into cooking more food than normal and her behavior was worse than usual. I have completely stopped helping her or even speaking with her. That sounds like my ex-wife so much. Did plenty for her. Would do anything she wanted to do even if I wasn't thrilled about it. But when it came to something that I wanted, she never seemed to have time for it. I eventually got to the point where I wouldn't even try to mention anything I wanted or liked. I put plenty of thought into gifts for her, but if I ever got something, it had no thought put into it. Basically got to the point where I felt selfish for even wanting anything. Took me a while to accept that I wasn't the problem or the selfish one. Eventually, I realized through help from a therapist that it was straight mental abuse. Relationships take compromise. When anything that happens to them is the worst thing in the world, and whatever happens to you is not that bad and a waste of time to talk about or even deal with. I know your mom died a month ago, but my best friend of 3 years died too, so I don't see why you're so sad all the time. I think narcissism and selfishness go hand in hand, so there you go. A friend of mine was talking to a mutual ex-friend about how she was feeling crappy because it was coming up on the anniversary of her sister's murder. The ex-friend responded that she was also feeling crappy and needed support because her boyfriend, who had been visiting for the weekend, had gone home. We both cut her off after that. After my sister's husband passed, a friend said, "I know exactly how that feels. My husband is in the army and goes away for months. But said husband comes home, can email, video call, and most of all, is not dead." She's now an ex-friend to everyone. I'll admit, I've caught myself doing the "I know how it feels" thing with friends before, but it's usually because I've been through the same thing. However, I've never tried to pass off a death of someone being on the same level as missing a partner that went home. That's just dumb. They feel no remorse for how they've hurt others. They don't think that they're wrong in the slightest bit. They can't shoulder any bit of responsibility. Look, it's not my fault that you can't do anything right. Very well then, I'm sorry you don't understand my point of view. You can't forget the classic, "You just misunderstood what I said. I didn't mean it like that." My former neighbors were bad alcoholics. Every night is a Friday night and weekends are like the new year. The police were constantly getting called to their house. Their kids not only destroyed their property, but other people's as well. Their junk was always thrown all over multiple yards. Their landlord ended up evicting them. My neighbor was pissed and fought hard in court to stay because they paid their rent via assistance. It was everyone else's fault but theirs. It was the landlord's fault for being biased against them. It was the neighbor's fault for complaining about their kids. It was their parents' fault for not helping more. Everyone was to blame, but not them. All I can say is it's been peaceful since they've been gone. They don't remember the times people have helped them, but remember clearly all the times that they helped others. It's easier to remember when you can count the number of times on your fingers. They bring nothing to the potluck, but are the first in line. Dude, screw these people the most. If you don't bring anything to the potluck, you better at least be cleaning up after the party. They respond how worse their situation is when you're sharing problems with them. They don't try to help or listen, they just draw attention to their side. Ah, the complainers. I have a friend like that, and lately I've just been letting her talk, with dry responses such as, "Oh wow, tough luck. Yeah, you've told me all of that via text." And I would talk only if she asked me a question. Well, the hangout got silent super fast. And it seems she is no longer satisfied sharing the details of her life with me. Nice. I once had a friend who would just complain all the time about everything, never really doing anything to fix the problems, and if she did, she'd still complain about it. One day I tell her that I want to be her friend, but our conversations were always so negative, and couldn't we just talk about some more positive things? The whole dynamic of the friendship changed, and she straight up just stopped talking to me saying, "I don't know what to talk to you about anymore." That admission tied with her inaction blew me away. We drifted apart and are no longer friends. I've actually done this with friends before as well. I've often been told that I give the comfortable vibe, where people can just talk to me about anything, which is nice, but I also have a problem solver brain, so when I have friends that complain about the same thing all the time and don't try to improve after my advice, I just lose interest in those conversations because they're meaningless at that point. Like, I understand venting, but if the bad smell doesn't leave the place after a while, something might be rotten. If you are in a group and there's that one person that is constantly interrupting the middle of what you or anyone else is saying, generally to brag about themselves with a one-upper story, that's a precursor to stop associating with them. I've met too many of those people in my day, and they are more often than not happy to throw you under the bus whenever the opportunity arises. If they always talk about themselves, I know many people that will not shut up about their day for an entire call, then just leave you when you start talking about yours. Likewise, but some people just aren't aware that they're doing that. I've politely mentioned that to a couple close friends, and they've been way more aware about their behavior since. Life isn't binary, and good people might have bad habits without knowing it. So trying to help them is my way of thinking. By the way, your mileage may vary, of course, hence me saying some people. I think it depends on the situation. I have a lot of friends that I keep in touch with via voice text messages or video text messages. Since these aren't real conversations because we respond when we can, both parties usually end up speaking about their days after quickly responding to any questions. They have that superpower that leads everything back to themselves. Even when you're actually talking about your own life or a specific problem of yours, they somehow make it that you start talking about them instead, without even changing the topic. Nearly everyone does this to a point. There's an extremely fine line between trying to comfort someone by saying something like, "I recently went through something with my father as well. I'm so sorry," and making their issues about yourself. It's crazy how common it is. And I guess if you are sharing something tragic to a group of people, at least one will try to make it into a competition and one-up you. I'm so nervous sometimes that people think I come off as the above comment, when I just want to say that I relate to you, not that it's about me. Sometimes just saying, "Hey, that sucks, I'm sorry," seems disingenuous. So saying, "Hey, I've been there and I know how much it sucks," sounds more genuine, I think. Conversations can be weird. They refuse to take responsibility for their actions. Similarly, someone who never apologizes. It takes a little longer to figure this out, but if after a few dozen hours of interactions, you've never heard "I'm sorry," you probably never will. I waited 4.5 years once. Never again. This is one of the main things I look out for when I might be interested in someone. I pay very close attention to how they act when they make mistakes or do something that has accountability attached. If they sidestep it every time, I know to cut them off at the knees. Complaining at work to coworkers doing your work for you while you complain. When they want to dig up your dead dog to use the skull for taxidermy purposes and is insistent on doing it despite your objections. They never admit when they're wrong, even if there is physical evidence. "Well, I'm sorry that you have a problem with me. Maybe you should stop being so sensitive. Why are you making that face? I literally just apologized to you." I wonder if this is everything it appears to be because I work with the dude who has a medium autism, so we look after him and he doesn't work. He's definitely not selfish. He'll go out of his way to help people who are more vulnerable than him and always puts them at ease and gets them to open up, interact, and basically have fun and feel safe. But you can't get him to stop talking about himself or his interests. It's all football, running, oh, have I told you about running and football? Harry Potter and that time 9 years ago when I accidentally farted? If you didn't know he was autistic, and it's actually not as apparent as you might expect, you probably would wonder why you can't get a word in edgewise. From an autistic perspective, that's probably the biggest compliment he could give you. He feels secure enough around you to talk about his interests and know that you're not going to dismiss him or make him feel bad for being excited about them. He'd likely appreciate if you gently spoke to him about keeping in mind that other people would like to talk about themselves too and their interests. And if you work together to find a balance that meant that he didn't feel ashamed, but also you could get a fair amount of speaking time in the conversation. Rejection-sensitive dysmorphia is a real issue for some of us, so make sure it's clear you're still interested in hearing about his stuff. I will say, once I learned a little bit more about autism, I definitely questioned if people have it or not when I have certain conversations. Mainly online. With some of the autistic people that I have talked to, their attention to detail is insane sometimes. So much so that it can cause them to overthink a situation. For example, I was talking about comic books with this one autistic person, and they were dead serious about some errors in comic books having a significance in the book, because there was no way the company would allow that to happen. No matter how much I explained that these things happened, they just wouldn't change their mind. So I definitely take this into consideration now instead of thinking everyone online is an idiot or thick-skulled. They're surprised and disgruntled when you accept what they offered. Example, I used to be friends with someone who loved to offer stuff. "I have some cute maternity clothes that would fit you. I can lend them to you if you want. I can help you rearrange your classroom. I'll come in early tomorrow. I made such a great apple pie. I can bring you a piece." These aren't things that anyone solicited. She offered them up, yet 100% expected that everyone will politely decline her offers. I'm a yes person. Anything you offer to me, I will happily accept. The look on her face when I would respond, "That would be great, thanks," was always priceless. She would never follow through with any of it, but she never stopped offering stuff, and I never stopped accepting. It was kind of hilarious. When they always play the victim card, 99% of the time, they only place themselves in the victim seat by ignoring all the efforts or costs of other people that they've had to endure and only focus on what they've had to go through themselves. I know this all too well, and when you call them out on it, you usually get hit with, "What do you mean? Where is this coming from?" Or my personal favorite, "This is all too much for me right now." Cliche answer, but I found the returning the shopping cart test to be pretty accurate. It is such a small thing, but it does tell you if a person thinks small things like that matter. This is my favorite armchair measuring of a good person. There is absolutely no benefit to you as a trolley returner, but there is a loss to other people if you don't. There's also no immediate human association like how you treat a server or retail employee. Just raw, are you thinking about the other guy? For me, it's people who listen to TikToks in public, especially in relatively silent places. There's a guy that hangs out at my favorite bar, doesn't talk much and keeps to himself, but he sits for hours watching videos on his phone with the volume on. It's the most obnoxious thing ever. Bartender finally told him to turn the volume off or just stop watching. He was 100% oblivious to the fact that no one else in this place wanted to hear that crap. Why does it make a difference if it's a TikTok? Make it loud anything. When using your mobile on public transport, I think you should not even have key sounds. It's bad enough people don't deactivate those. Also, listening to a soccer match or whatever without bothering to use any headphones is just pure evil. I was so confused for a bit by that last comment when they said keys shouldn't have sounds. I was like, damn, you want people to silence their house keys? That's some insane entitlement right there, man. Then I realized they meant keyboard keys. My ex was insanely selfish. Her dad gave her a $20K a month allowance, plus paid for the mortgage of her penthouse in New York City, while she went to Yale. He paid her car plus insurance. She had zero need for cash. All bills are paid. He also gave her a credit card with, I'm assuming, no limit, cause we bought a car once on a whim. But I saw her steal $3 from a friend who was passed out. She'd steal panties from Walmart. She had a pile of cash in her bedroom. We once needed to pay for a delivery. I don't know if it was a bagel or pizza, but she refused to touch the pile of cash. I had to walk to my car to get cash. And when I tipped the delivery girl $10 for waiting, my ex went ballistic, calling me a bee, a moron, and queer. Cause why would you give that random porky bee $10 for $5 worth of food? We went to a celeb wedding. She found a way to take 4 gift baskets as opposed to the 2 we were supposed to get. Every guest got 1. She also stole a $500 gift card to Victoria's Secret from the wedding. She was wicked greedy. One of my workmates had her drink taken from the fridge by someone else. When she put a sign up on the fridge to remind people not to take things, another guy asked her why she was doing it. She explains that her drink was taken, and without skipping a beat, he said, "Oh yeah, that's because someone took mine." So not only admitted to doing it, but his justification was that someone did it to him. So yeah, I'd say that. This is what people call paying their dues. Other people treated me poorly, so I need to perpetuate that to somehow justify it being done to me. If you don't have the same hardship, then somehow it's not fair. This is embedded to so many aspects of our society and has got to be some form of evil. The paying your dues comment is so true. At my old job, all the lifers would be so mad that I wasn't busting my balls doing extra work that wasn't in my job description. I'm not getting paid to do that extra work, so until I am, get someone in a higher position to do it. They would claim, young people don't know how to work anymore. Look, Grandpa, I'm sorry that I just don't bend the knee and do whatever my employer tells me to do. If the higher ups can get bonuses each year, they can afford to pay me to do more work. Trauma dumping and then not reciprocating if someone else had a bad day or felt comfortable enough to open up to them. When they go out clubbing or something and bring their friends back home to continue the party at 2 a.m. However, he lives in a share house and his roommates have to go to work in the morning. Ever since I told him to break up the party and that isn't appropriate, especially since he didn't mention to anyone that he decided to have a 2 a.m. Wednesday night party, he complied, but ever since then he's been unpleasant and unfriendly with me. Jerk. The more they ask in a relationship, the more you're having to give. That is, I think of relationships like a bridge. Generally, you should build from both sides, and in crisis you make up the difference. But a friendship is primarily meeting each other in the middle. Selfish or self-centered people pretend to build a relationship, but ask you to build the relational bridge all the way toward them. Ultimately, they expect you to build the relationship entirely towards them, and you're left giving more than receiving. When they are unable to see beyond their own needs and feelings and aren't capable of recognizing that they're impacting the people around them in negative ways. Another sign of a selfish person is when they're driven by only self-interests and don't care about how their actions might affect others. People who have kids on purpose and then act like their kids owe them. well above and beyond basic kindness and human respect for the rest of their lives. They throw other people under the bus so fast that you get whiplash if you stand too close. Whether to save themselves or to humiliate the competition. No self-accounting at all. I love these threads. I always use them as a way to measure whether I'm doing those things or not, and fix them if I am. Made it about yourself, haven't you? You got me good. I'll end this video with a quick selfish person I used to be friends with. This guy was a master manipulator. He would reel you in with his charm and nice guy persona. He straight up offered me a chance to go to a comic convention I had always dreamed of going to. I joined his friend group, and that's when I noticed the little things he wanted people to do. He would ask people, "Are you gonna be doing this? While there, can you get this for me?" Or, "Hey, can you do this and I'll meet you there?" All these things seemed harmless and everyone helped him out because he was a nice guy. But everything was done to serve his own needs. I ended up having a falling out with this guy and was basically kicked from the friend group. Turns out everyone was extremely confused on why I was kicked out. But I found out later that he was saying some of the most messed up crap about me to this group. And basically anyone that would listen. Luckily, one of the girls in the group called BS because she was always suspicious of this guy. Months later, he kicked out another guy in the group, and that's when the girl said, "You should reach out to OP and see what really happened." We ended up getting breakfast and we kinda just said everything that was going on. Turns out this dude was bad-mouthing everyone behind their backs and was using everyone to gain something. We had an older lady in our friend group, and he would use her to jump lines at cons because she had disability access to get into things. This dude was the ultimate scumbag, and the last time I checked, he was dating a girl who, oddly enough, enjoys waiting in lines and has a history of being manipulated.
Doctors of Reddit, what's something you've had to tell a patient that you thought for sure was common knowledge? Have had to inform a few male patients that the condom only goes on the shaft and should not be pulled down to include covering of the testicles. How a shorter/fatter 5ml oral syringe held more volume than a skinnier and longer 1ml oral syringe. How does this hold more liquid when it's shorter? Also, I've seen almost every incorrect way to use an inhaler, upside down being fairly common. People taking birth control pills only on the days they have intimacy. I no longer assume anything as common knowledge. I'd rather have someone be offended that I explained something basic than to have something awful happen because I assumed the patient knew something. After putting a few stitches in a middle-aged guy's scalp, the family asked if he was okay. The attending joked that his brain was still inside. The family were stunned by this news. I, the medical student, spent the next half hour informing the family that the brain was inside the skull and that a person couldn't live without one. They thought that the brain was just a turn of phrase to reflect a person's common sense rather than an actual organ. Sort of the same as what they thought about the heart. I'm not a doctor, but I'm an ER nurse. I had a patient come in for an STD check. She was very upset and continued to tell me that she only had one partner. Progressing through my assessment, she further divulged that even if he was sleeping with other people, it shouldn't matter because he uses a condom every time and he makes sure to wash it thoroughly after every use. I asked what she meant when she said he washes it after every use. She explained that he washed the condom with hot water and soap before he used said condom again. I had to explain to her that condoms are a one-time use product. She had no clue. My dad is a family doctor in the States. A woman came in for a well baby check with their 6-month-old and she had what looked like chocolate milk in the baby's bottle, so he started explaining to her as kindly as he could that she shouldn't be giving her baby chocolate milk, at which point she interrupts him and says, "Oh, that isn't chocolate milk, it's coffee. He just loves it." If you're going to put it in your butt, make sure it has a flared base, or is attached to something you won't lose your grip on. Corollary, if you've already lost something in your butt, don't lie to the triage nurse and then medical team. While your story is usually amusing, we don't really care how it ended up in there. Pediatric nurse here. I've told more than one parent that their infant should not be drinking Dr. Pepper out of their bottle, or any other vessel for that matter. Viagra does not prevent STDs or pregnancy. Not a doctor, but a paramedic. During clinical time in the ER, 17-year-old came in with a bloody rectum/anus. Apparently she wasn't wiping after using the bathroom and it was basically really bad diaper rash. So the nurse had to call social services and explain to this girl proper wiping. I'm a veterinary technician. I once had to explain to a client that the ticks she had been frantically trying to remove from her male dog's belly with tweezers were actually his nipples. I also told her she had an extremely well-behaved patient dog. Not a doctor, RN in the ICU. I've seen some really stupid people over the years, but a few weeks ago, a patient's family member got into a verbal altercation with me over the fact that I was trying to freeze his mother to death. He kept pointing to the digital thermostat displaying a temperature of 23 degrees Celsius, We're in the US, by the way. When I gently explained to him that 23 degrees Celsius is not at all cold, he just kept pointing to the display and shouting, "You don't think 23 degrees is cold? It's 23 freaking degrees in here!" and acting insane. After multiple attempts to explain to him what Celsius is by myself, the charge nurse, house supervisor, and security, we finally gave up and had him escorted out. He was a man in at least his late 30s who's graduated high school and had never heard of Celsius and Fahrenheit. He literally thought we were making it up in an attempt to conceal my efforts to freeze his intubated, critically ill mother to death. Slightly graphic warning. Another vet here. Dead bodies decompose. If you leave your dead dog I euthanized in the back of your car on the hottest day of the year, don't come crying to me when its belly fills with putrefying gases and bursts. Demanding I cover the costs of reupholstering your car might be considered a little rude as well. A hospital is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for medical emergencies. So the next time you have a stroke on Friday, come in on Friday and don't wait for the weekend to pass. A child cannot have inherited any genetic traits from someone the mother has previously been with. Only one man is the biological father. My wife and I were trying to get pregnant, and due to possible complications, we were talking to an obstetrician. Towards the end of the visit, he tells us in all seriousness, "Just so you guys know, you have to stop using condoms if you want to get pregnant." We just stare at him a bit and say, obviously? And he just shakes his head and says, "You'd be surprised. There's been a few couples that really didn't realize that." My grandmother was the ignorant one getting in explaining. She was 18 and in labor with her first child. She was the kind of lady to wear pants in the late 40s. The nurse looked her up and down and told her to put on the labor clothes. So she took off her top and bra and got on the bed. The nurse is really confused. "Take off your pants too." "Why? It comes out my belly button, right?" asked Grandma. "No, darling, it comes out the way he came in." ER nurse here had to explain to a 27-year-old female that this bleeding she was having for a week every month was normal and why. She had 2 children, by the way. My mother is a nurse and has been for over 25 years. The only story of hers that makes me sick is the story of a man who could not afford Viagra. So he reasoned his cock gun should do the trick, right? It'd stay in there and keep him ready. So he put the tip of the gun in his urethra and filled himself up. Long story short, don't do that. Don't, for Christ's sake, ever do anything even remotely like that. Podiatrist buddy told me this one. Lady has to have foot amputated and is given waiver forms to sign pre-op. Buddy asks if she needs time to think about it. She's very nonchalant and doesn't seem to care much what they do. He gets suspicious and probes a bit as to why she's not more concerned. She says she gets that they have to operate and it's okay because the foot will grow back. He then has to explain she's not a salamander. Things get a bit more serious. Okay, but like salamanders are cool? Imagine if we could regrow our limbs like salamanders. That'd be sick. Not a doctor, but a nutritionist. I work with a lot of different patients, and I have tons of stories about food stupidity. Had a lady have bariatric surgery. Your stomach gets surgically stapled smaller. And her mother kept trying to force her to eat real food the day of the surgery when she was on a liquid diet. She would eat it, puke, rip her stitches out, repeat. We had to ban the mother from seeing her because she would literally blackmail and guilt trip this poor lady into eating a whole pizza, barf it all up because her poor post-surgery stomach couldn't handle it, and end up ripping out stitches and causing enormous pain because her mother was positive that she would die if she was on a liquid diet for a couple days. Another lady I was seeing for clinicals was diabetic, and she would come in every week with stupid high blood sugar levels, 250 to 260-ish. Not knowing why they were so high, she kept a record of everything she ate, and all of her food intake seemed fine. One day, her husband came with her, which was weird, and he ninja slipped me a note while shaking my hand. It read, "Ask her about the Quick Trip slushies. She doesn't believe me that they have sugar in them." So I asked her if she was having any soda, lemonade, tea, ice cream, shakes, or slushies, and she told me, like a light bulb had gone off in her head. "Well, I have been drinking about 3 of the 48-ounce Quick Trip slushies every day for a while now. They're just so good. And they aren't food or drink, they're slushies. So they don't have any sugar in them, and I don't need to record them." It was so hard to convince her that those are so full of sugar it isn't even funny. But seriously, 3 a day on a type 2 diabetic? It was one of the stupidest things I've ever heard in my life. A nursing home called 911 for a patient who was having difficulty breathing. When we arrived, a PA was standing in front of the patient, vigorously fanning the old lady with her hands. She looked at us and said, "I'm giving her some oxygen because we couldn't find a portable O2 tank," and keeps flapping her arms. Remember, this is a physician assistant, probably making $100,000 a year. I informed her that she could stop now, and my partner and I did our best to wait until we were outside to burst out laughing. Going off on a side tangent here, some people don't handle stress well. I volunteer as an emergency first responder, but one of the funniest cases I've seen of was out of uniform in an airport. A larger gentleman who suffered from COPD had taken a 6-hour flight. Upon getting through security, he had collapsed and was having difficulty breathing. The first person on scene to help the guy was a firefighter. I was second on scene, younger and smaller than the firefighter. I'm 6'3" and not skinny. This guy was just huge. So I'm letting him take lead as I run through making sure EMS is on the way, checking this guy's vitals, stabilizing his head and neck. Big guy, went from conscious to unconscious quickly and fell straight down, and getting a history from his family. In the meantime, the firefighter's kinda starting to panic a little. He may have been new, or just the fact that he was out of uniform and not expecting it threw him. Either way, as the man regains consciousness and I start running through a quick GCS test, which involves me and the gentleman talking to each other and treating for shock, the firefighter tries to retake the guy's vitals. He fails to find a pulse. Understand at this point I am communicating with the patient. He's not completely lucid, but he is speaking to me and groaning. Having failed to find a pulse, the firefighter assumes this gentleman is in full-on cardiac arrest and begins to attempt to apply an AED to his chest. I say attempt because, along with being large, this gentleman was somewhat hairy. Now, in any first aid course for anyone that involves teaching one to use an AED, one of the first things you cover is that the razor in the kit is there in case you need to shave someone. The firefighter, having failed to realize that talking probably means the patient isn't in cardiac arrest and that he is having trouble getting a pulse because the patient is larger, then fails to shave the guy's chest. This leaves the patient with the 2 contact pads hanging off of his chest hair, but very much not in any way contacting his skin, while I've just started to realize what the firefighter was trying to do. At that point, fortunately, an older woman arrives and identifies herself as a trauma nurse, who are, by the way, just about the best people to have on your side if something like this happens. She tells him to go talk to the family, takes lead, and everything goes smoothly from then until the airport medical folks show up and take over. Unfortunately, I'm having trouble not laughing the whole time at the image of the firefighter staring intently at an AED that can't possibly give him a reading on the condition of the now conscious and lucid patient. TLDR, even people who should know better sometimes lose it under stress. Had a lady measure her baby's temperature by preheating the oven and putting one hand in front of it while the other hand was on the baby's forehead. She told the nurse her baby's fever was about 250 degrees. Lady, you either think you're the Human Torch or you don't understand how conduction works. I had an old lady come in with a massive bleed in her brain. She was pretty much gone. I had to explain to her tearful son that there was nothing we could do. He said that he loved his mama and he'd give anything for her. So he asked us to give her his brain for a brain transplant. I actually was left speechless for a minute and then had to spend another 20 minutes explaining why that was not possible. Mom brought her kids to the ER after they ate all of their Halloween candy because they had tummy aches. They were still eating Reese's peanut butter cups when they were in the exam room. I had to explain to her that they need to cut back on the candy, and she looked at me like I had 3 heads. For almost a month, my friend had random pains. Bruises started showing up randomly. He looked ashen, and what we first thought was him being lazy was actually him not having any energy. Finally, his girlfriend got him to agree to go to the doctor, who sent him to the ER, where it took several doctors to figure out what was wrong, either because none of them had actually seen it in real life, or they didn't think someone could be that stupid. Quote the doctor, "You have scurvy. Eat a freaking orange." Ooh, I've got another one. Inhaler technique. So we're told to always show a patient how to take an inhaler if they are new to them, and that we should check technique every so often. Yeah, you think. How hard can it be? Well, my senior once noticed that a patient was getting repeat prescriptions for an inhaler every week rather than every month. We brought her in to find out why. Oh, it just doesn't seem to work very well. I press it up to 50 times and it doesn't help. We were in shock over this. Salbutamol inhalers taken in excess, we're talking like 10 puffs taken in an asthma attack, can give you a thumping headache, a tremor, and a dry mouth. How is she taking 50 and not noticing? We asked to see the technique. Yeah, turns out she was spraying it onto her chest. Internal face palms were had, and we educated her on how to take it properly. A PhD isn't that kind of doctor. Please don't show me that rash. During paramedic school, my teacher was a PA who told us a story of a lady that came into the clinic he was working at. She said she didn't feel well, nothing but general fatigue and not feeling right. He had the nurse do a standard set of vitals and a blood glucose. Her glucose was extremely high, so he goes in to talk to her. He asked, "Has anyone ever told you that you have diabetes?" She replied, "Yeah, a doctor said that I had that once and I took some medication for a couple weeks and felt better." He then had to explain to her that diabetes doesn't go away after some medication. I had the opposite happen to my wife. She was pregnant and had a thyroid nodule. We were concerned about how removal could affect the pregnancy due to changes in hormone levels and anesthetic during the surgery. We stated this concern quite clearly and in great detail. His response was that he will be operating on the neck and that it was nowhere near the baby. Thanks for answering a question we never had and ignoring ours. He was really pushing for surgery before delivery. We did not see him again. I work in a hospital lab. Quite a few years ago, there was a patient who was on our schedule for a semen analysis from one of our fertility doctors. The between the lines here is the patient was having some fertility problems. Patient presents us with a cup of urine. We explain that we need a semen sample, not a urine one. Confused why his first sample was rejected, he goes back to the private bathroom at the end of the hall. About half an hour later, he comes back with another urine sample, and that's when I literally had to have both a birds and bees talk with a man in his mid-30s and clue him in on the world of self-pleasure. This has actually happened twice now in my 8 years, and I found out about another guy when I was talking to my manager about it. The second time, I had a few thoughts. I could save these guys thousands of dollars by explaining how to have intimacy properly. Somehow, it never came up in the office that the wrong fluid is being used. I had to explain to a frantic mother that non-traumatic vaginal bleeding with abdominal cramps is normal in a 12-year-old. I tried to throw her a hint when I asked when the girl's last menstrual cycle was. She merely replied in hysterics, "She doesn't have menstrual cycles! She's only 12!" I'll leave the diagnosis to your imagination. I'm a CNA at a nursing home. We got a new resident in and she had a huge bed sore near her tailbone region that had become infected and abscessed to the point that you probably could have fit a Coke can inside the opening. It had to be cleaned, packed, and have a wound pump attached to it every 12 hours. Turns out before she came to us, her family didn't think she needed any at-home help, so they would go over in the morning, get her up, bathe, dressed, put a Pop-Tart on the table for her, get her in her wheelchair, and go about their day. She was incontinent and would sit in the chair for 12 to 15 hours a day covered in her own urine and feces until they came back, wiped her off, and put her back in her bed for the night. Sitting all day in your own filth, it turns out, leads to bed sores. The day she was admitted to my facility, her family, my administrator, and everyone were all talking in a room. They had introduced us and let her know I'd be taking care of her at night from now on. She whispered to me that she needed to go to the bathroom, and I had to kick out my boss and her family because her son insisted that she can just hold it. She was never able to get over the raging infection in her wound, and it eventually killed her. It was one of those situations where I honestly wish I could have looked them in the face and told them, "You know you're the one that killed your mother, right? You killed her." Just as an update, yes, we tried to turn them in for elder abuse, but she was actually still sound of mind and realized what we were going to do. And so, she recanted her story and said she had never told us anything like that. She didn't want to see her son in jail for what he did to her, so she went to her death telling people things had just gotten out of hand and she was too weak. Paramedic here. Have informed numerous people that pouring Gatorade into the unresponsive diabetic's mouth is not a good idea. What you should do, call an ambulance. If they have a glucagon emergency kit, follow its instructions. Do not put anything in, on, near, or around their face. I've heard the powdered sugar and gums, etc., but if you expect an ambulance within 20 minutes, just lie them on their side and wait. Drink the Gatorade yourself. You deserved it. You just saved their freaking life. My mother who worked as a pediatric nurse. She had a mother whose child was putting on a startling amount of weight. This was bad since the patient's mother was obese and had diabetes, and they wanted to control weight gain for baby. So they went through the feeding schedule. Baby was due for a bottle during the checkup. The mother whips out a bottle during appointment. My mom is startled to see the milk is bright pink. She asks, why is the milk bright pink? The child's mother explains that her kid prefers the milk if it has strawberry quick mixed in and drinks more milk. The mom didn't get the connection between quick and weight gain. TLDR, don't feed your child the betas. It makes them fat from the start. IDOC here. Just today, I had to tell a patient that no, you should not attempt to continue wearing a contact lens that was dropped in the toilet. This is like a worse version of that eyeball licking trend from 2013, which actually turns out was a hoax. In a free medical clinic, I had to tell a mother that she should be brushing her 4-year-old's teeth. The daughter came because her throat hurt. After opening her mouth and using a tongue depressor to see her throat, the daughter squirmed like 4-year-olds are prone to do, and the tongue depressor hit her gums. Pus flowed everywhere, and the child wound up having to be put on penicillin before having every last tooth pulled due to severe infection. You should start brushing your infant's teeth as soon as they start teething, and do a gentle gum massage with a baby toothbrush before that. Use safe-to-swallow toothpaste before the child is 10. Let the child brush their own teeth as soon as they are able for practice, and then have an adult brush them at a 45-degree angle toward the gums in small circles. Children should be supervised brushing their teeth until they're at least 12 or longer if necessary. This occurred in Nicaragua, quite far from any major city, and wasn't reported because the mother did follow-up and kept the appointment for extractions. The thought of brushing her daughter's teeth simply never arose. Before modern toothbrushes were invented, people used bones, porcupine quills, sticks, and chew sticks. The ancient Romans had toothbrushes as well. Yes, you should brush your pet's teeth. Pet toothpaste only, no fluoride. No, I didn't murder the mother. She was provided with 6 months' worth of dental supplies for both of them and thoroughly educated on dental hygiene. Alright, now for the old switcheroo. My ex-mother-in-law was a pediatrician. However, her education was all from the 60s and 70s in Cold War Poland, and she hadn't practiced as a pediatrician for 30 years when our doctor was born. Like a lot of first-time parents, we read all of the books, and the vast consensus at the time was that the only thing babies need is mother's milk. So we set ourselves up for that, and the baby is thriving after a couple of weeks with our doctor telling us everything is fine. Mother-in-law comes to visit, and of course, we're doing everything wrong. We can't hold the baby right, we're being too attentive, we're not being attentive enough, she's too warm, she's too cold. I think you expect a certain amount of that, but then she starts insisting on giving the baby sugared black tea in a bottle. I'm not the smartest guy on the planet, but I'm smart enough to let the wife and her mom settle this between them. Lots of screaming back and forth. Showed her the literature from our doctor about nursing, all the references in the baby books, pulled down a couple of recent research articles, but the crazy old battle axe didn't give up. Finally, I caught her after we foolishly left her alone with the baby for a couple of minutes, trying to force her to take a bottle with tea in it. She yelled at my wife, "In a week, I will go back home and then you can do whatever you want with the baby." In a level voice, I told her, "That's what you don't seem to understand. We can do whatever we want with the baby right now." RN. Not an MD, but here's the story. Patient was a newly diagnosed diabetic who needed to be taught how to inject insulin. So the diabetes educator did the good old routine of taking an orange, drawing up insulin, then injecting it into the orange, then made the patient repeat it. Patient goes home, comes back in a week, and his blood sugar is out of control. They ask him if he's been taking his insulin, and he goes, "Of course." So they decide to ask him to demonstrate how he injects insulin. The patient goes, "Sure, I just need an orange." At this point, I started face-palming hard because I know where this one is heading. But of course, they got him an orange and a vial of insulin with the syringe. So the guy draws up the insulin correctly, takes the syringe, injects it into the orange, and then says, "And then I eat the orange." At this point, I had to walk out because I nearly lost myself right there. I once had a patient with a cancer diagnosis completely depressed about not being able to see their family anymore. I was confused because I had spoken with this individual's spouse and extended family who seemed supportive. There wasn't any indication of family problems. It turns out this individual thought genetic and family history had meant something similar to contagious, leading them to the conclusion that one should stay away from loved ones lest it be spread through the family. That was one clarification I was so happy to give. To those wondering how such a misunderstanding is possible, keep in mind that we ought not to judge. Not everyone has the benefit of a good education, nor is everyone part of a generation and culture that has always had medicine and science in their lives. Other times, language and jargon can be a barrier to understanding. I was not the physician that failed to communicate the issues effectively, but we were all glad that at least his problem could be easily dealt with.
What's the worst case of rich kid syndrome you've ever seen? I once had a mum ask if I could open up the back of our ambulance so her kid could see what was inside, since he wanted to be a firefighter. I'm a medic, not a firefighter. I agree as long as he doesn't touch anything. Of course, the second the door opens, the kid hops in and goes straight for our expensive monitor. I tell him no, that it's dangerous and could break, to which he starts screaming, "I don't care, my mum will buy it." And the mum says, "It's fine, just let him play with it. If it breaks, I'll replace it." I had to physically pick him up and carry him out of the ambulance, since she didn't even try to control him. While this is happening, we get paged out for a call, and this B-word suggests that she could pay double our hourly wage if we stay for a few more minutes so her little crap bag could explore/destroy more of our equipment. Get the flip on out of here with that crap, lady. You're willing to delay an ambulance so you won't have to deal with your precious little Joey's tantrum? Unbefrickin-leavable. Oh, that's a winner right there. Ignore your call, it's probably just a poor person anyway. This is what makes me want to punch strangers. Like, just slap the heck out of that woman about 9 times, and then tell the kid this could happen to anyone. Just shock them into reality. But mostly I'm just a mom that would be so frickin' proud of my kid growing up to work in an ambulance, helping others, and making a real difference. And then there's this witch making light of it like the boxy car with the loud siren and flashy lights is a disposable toy for her kid. My roommate refused to go with his family for spring break since there wasn't a flight with first-class seats and only business class was available. He ended up just taking a connecting flight that did have first class available, while the rest of his family just took business on the direct flight. Wouldn't exactly call it rich kid syndrome, but it took me a while to get used to my girlfriend's lifestyle. I grew up in a very working-class family with both my parents working full-time just for us to stay afloat. Went round to my girlfriend's house and saw a lady making food in the kitchen. "Oh, you must be Mrs. Surname," trying to be really polite and introduce myself to her family. That was actually their maid. Awkward. Luckily, they're all really down to earth and stuff, because turns out her parents were basically homeless and living out of storage space when they were my age. But her parents started up a little business that actually became successful enough to support them, and then just kept growing. Figures. People who come from humble beginnings often turn out to become decent people when, and if, they do get rich. I don't think it's too off the mark to say that most of the potential problems come from generations of wealth and complacence, even just one or two. The dude who relentlessly bullied me in school was also one of the richest people in the city. One day a teacher caught him with his hands around my throat and I was pinned against a wall. We were both taken to the teacher's meeting room where it was explained to me that we should try and get along and that we should apologize to each other. Did I mention his dad also built the flash new cafeteria for the school that year? He was caught on numerous occasions with me in some state of distress, and every time they found ways to make it both our problem. His dad pumped a lot of money into that school. He also flew his friends on private airline to Manchester United games, so nobody stood up for me because they could lose their privileges. My saving grace was a lot of his mates in early years of secondary school turned on him in later years because he was such a butthole. Man, clearly I'm not over it. Attended an international high school in Ho Chi Minh City, where a lot of new wave millionaires' kids live. The school was ridiculous. A third of the kids were expats, perfectly lovely kids. A third were local Vietnamese kids whose parents were working their butts off to send them to a private school, and the other third were these millionaire kids. They wouldn't ever hesitate to show off their mummy and daddy's wealth. They'd pull up to school in Lamborghinis, Ferraris, etc., and if their Rolls-Royce didn't come on time to pick them up after school, it would be a straight phone call to their other driver to, "Come pick me up right now." There'd be such pricks 24/7 to the non-rich locals, classist butt kids, and constantly just bringing up the most trivial things and complaining about them. I'm literally not exaggerating here when I say this. My maid brought me the wrong LV bag. I told her it was the tan brown one, not the light brown one. Ugh, I can't believe it. Now we have to send her on the jet to Shanghai to get it. They all paid and used family connections to get into Harvard, Stanford, UPenn, etc., and even now constantly complain on Facebook and Instagram about how crap their residence hall food was, so they just hired some freaking personal chef or something. Mind you, these kids were the dumbest bunch I've ever seen. One of them literally was clueless about the most basic facts, but still got into business management. Despised the lot of them. Glad I'm in Europe, far away from most of them. Group of rich school kids in Montana out driving around, drinking. Found 2 combines, large farm tractor thingies, worth about $250,000 each, out in a wheat field. Decided to have a demolition derby. Got caught. In the judge's chambers with the farmer who just wanted the damages reimbursed. The high-end family lawyers asked what the heck they were thinking when they did it. The response, "Well, you can't put a price on a good time." Turns out that was the wrong answer. That farmer should have wanted compensation for all his trouble. My God. Especially if the combines were in the field, like, dude is literally in the middle of harvesting. Can't tell you how many Thanksgiving vacations I helped my grandparents with stuff because everyone was still combining and drying corn until the middle of the night. He was 25 years old when I knew him. His father owned oil fields. He had a credit card that he used for anything and everything, that they paid the balance on every month. He never even kept track of what was charged on it, just bought whatever caught his fancy. He openly and shamelessly admitted that he offered his college professor money to give him a passing grade. One day, he was cranky about something and said, "I wish my parents would just die so I could have their money. Why should I have to wait?" When your children talk like Disney villains or members of the Borgia family, it's time to just throw them out and start from scratch. Back in high school, we were doing one of those icebreakers where we passed a beach ball around, and whoever caught it had to answer the question their thumb landed on. Well, this kid who was proclaimed being rich numerous times before talking about his parents owning a known pizza place and how he drives an expensive sports car caught the ball, and his question was, "If you won $1 million, what would you do with it?" His response was somewhere along the lines of, "$1 million wouldn't make any difference in my life." Thanks a lot, Brad. You ruined the game. Wow, what a frickin' power move, though. A very distant relative of ours, i.e. some weird branch of the family tree, offered her son a bribe of an entire apartment building if he finished his undergraduate accounting degree. I just went, "What?" So you get an immediate investment after graduating and you can rent out the place for mega dollars. My significant other has a rich aunt and uncle with an only child. When he graduated college, his gift was a complex that brings in enough money that this kid could retire on it. If you ask him, he's self-made though. I don't know about rich, but just spoiled. My cousin insisted on a $15,000 wedding ring and $30,000 wedding. She and the groom made about $20,000 to $25,000 a year combined. Her dad paid for everything. They divorced within 6 months. She wanted a wedding, not a marriage. I have a kid in my MBA cohort that outsources his homework and projects to India. He whined and moaned when one of our professors gave him a C when he only showed up to 2 classes after he, Dad, donated $10,000 to the school. Overall, nice guy, but doesn't really have a clue. Outsources his homework and projects to India? He's just practicing for when he goes into the corporate world. I'm trying to figure out how he passes in-class tests. Maybe the $10K donation went to the overworked and underpaid PhD student grading the exams. A kid who would dramatically throw down his smartphone on the ground in mock frustration. Broken phones were replaced with few to no questions. For the record, his name ended with the third. I went to middle/elementary school, but with some very wealthy people. Typically, I was oblivious enough to not really realize it, but 2 instances come to mind. In 5th grade, we did an exchange trip type of thing with some kids in Canada. On the flight over there, one of my classmates said, "Wow, this is crazy. I've only ever flown first class before." Later, in 8th grade, I was at that same kid's house, an absolute mansion on top of a hill, with the long landscaped entrance drive, marble-floored entrance hall with stairs winding up either side, etc., and he and a girl, who had been dropped off in her dad's newer Ferrari, started having a discussion comparing the merits of their relative in-home movie theaters. Like not just a living room with a cool AV setup, but full-on movie theaters with rows of seats that could seat about 50 people. My family wasn't poor, but that was when I realized we weren't rich either. I deliver pizza in a very rich area. I'm talking seeing Rolls-Royces and supercars on a daily basis kind of rich. My manager told me a story of someone that used to work there. This guy would deliver pizzas in a brand new BMW M3 and just put absolutely no effort into his job. Delivering pizza isn't hard. Apparently, this guy only had a job because his parents wouldn't pay his allowance if he didn't work. How much was his allowance? $5,000 a month. This guy was making $60,000 a year to deliver pizza part-time. That's actually super common with wealthy families. An acquaintance of mine has the same deal with his parents. Work 40 hours a week and get paid $100,000 a year in allowance, plus the $15,000 a month mortgage paid for. I should point out, this is a New York City financial district apartment. $15,000 a month is for a good-sized 2-bedroom condo. Normally when I spit my drink all over the screen when writing these scripts, it's because I'm laughing. This time, it was out of sheer incredulity. Brought my college roommate to my mum's house for Thanksgiving because he lived in a different state and I only lived 15 minutes from campus. I gave him a quick tour of the house and he was astonished by how clean it all was. My mum's a neat freak and keeps a very clean house. Then he said to my mum, "Wow, you guys must have a really good maid service." I've never seen my mum laugh that hard before. 2 girls, both nice and fairly level-headed, but also just raised too darn rich. One would take a taxi everywhere in town. It was a very safe, small college town with free campus buses, and she had taxi across campus. She lived 2 blocks away from me and would take a taxi from her dorm to my house. Google Maps says it's a full 4-minute walk. She swore she just had a terrible sense of direction and couldn't figure out where we lived. But you'd think after the first embarrassingly short taxi ride, she'd throw our address into Google Maps and just walk. The other would regularly complain about people not knowing how to manage their money. It took a while to figure out, but eventually it clicked that she meant very poor people didn't know how to invest their money in stocks and bonds. Then one day, we were having a conversation where she revealed she didn't think a house in Detroit in 2010 could possibly cost under $1 million. I told her I grew up in a nice $180,000 house, and she thought I was dumb or lying. Shattered her world when I showed her my home on Zillow. When she graduated college, she complained about how much stuff costs all the time. It was nice seeing her learn the value of $1 finally. Her parents stopped paying her way after she got a job. She was probably making $70,000 to $80,000 in her first job, but she was living in Pasadena too. She talked all the time about how poor she was and about how she was living in an apartment above a garage. But at the same time, I lived in an apartment with 5 other people and felt pretty wealthy, making $11 an hour, so I wasn't exactly heartbroken for her. Mother fricker, I'd chop off a limb to be making $80K a year. Kid in my high school crashed 6 cars within a year. And they weren't like 1990s Toyotas and Hondas most high schoolers buy, themselves. These were brand new Subaru STIs, a BRZ, a BMW, brand new Jeep, stuff like that. The last car his dad bought him was a semi-new Ford Focus, a decent car, better than my 1997 white Camry. Every day he complained and threw a fit his dad wouldn't buy him another $30,000 car. Sounds like his dad needs to buy him a driving tutor. Buying people is usually frowned upon. I work with a guy like the people in these stories. He recently proposed to a girl he dated for a few weeks with a $5,000 ring. He's 19 and we make less than $30,000 a year. They're married a month later. The girl always looks miserable and the guy is always skirting responsibilities at work. I'd say I only give it a few more weeks, but she might try to milk him for his daddy's money for a little longer. One of the kids in my grade brought bags of cocaine to senior prom. Not only did his parents let him go, but the police did too. Now I believe he's in an engineering program at Yale. Good luck with that, money won't save you from thermals and fluids. A kid that used to work for me came into work super teed off one day. I asked him what was wrong, to which he replied, "My freaking maid didn't make my bed again, but my dad still won't fire her." This was all my college roommates. They couldn't do laundry, pick up after themselves, clean dishes, or make themselves a frickin' sandwich. The ones whose parents lived close by, their mommies would come by and clean up and do their laundry. Came back from a music festival in Southeast Asia, got VIP tickets. I swear this isn't about me. One of the other festival goers is a 20-something-year-old Asian girl who looks like she is straight out of the movie Crazy Rich Asians. This chick had a photographer following her around, snapping pics of her posing in front of the stage with various acts, getting in the way of other people trying to dance. She asked security if she could get them to clear a section for her to get an unobstructed view of the stage for better photos. She bought a couple of bottles, 6, for her table, and again had the photographer take an incredible number of photos of her posing with her bottles of Martell and Jameson. She was incredibly rude to the waitstaff, snapping her fingers and in general talking to them like they were lower-class citizens. She asked my mate and I, both Westerners, to hang with her and her mates at her table, and again have the photographers take photos of her posing with us at the table. The other 2 guys from our group, both Asian, approached us when they saw that we were at the table and it looked like we had made some friends. When they approached us, the girl and her friends got quiet, spoke amongst themselves in Indonesian, and basically shooed them away. We left them after they did that and walked over to our friends. One of the guys is Indo and he told us that she basically told them to get lost and know your place. Friend in college literally went to the local GameStop at midnight every Tuesday. He'd buy every new release for every console. We went over to his house one time that year and he had about 60-ish games that were unopened. One time, we were walking around campus and he stopped by the ATM. He got his receipt and called his dad. Turns out his dad was worried his funds were running low, so he sent him $25K just to make sure he wasn't going to starve. I like to imagine that this guy went bankrupt trying to buy every new Steam release. Considering that some of the simulator games I've seen have more than tens of thousands of euros worth of DLC, looking at you train and flight simulators, that would be kind of amazing. I used to work for a family that had a cleaning lady come every other day. None of the kids made their own bed, had to make their own food, or wash their own dishes. Heck, never even loaded a dish into the dishwasher. They just left them on the table for someone else to pick up. Have never done their own laundry. When the son had football practice, I watched a teenaged boy have a gosh darn meltdown sobbing and cursing about their maid not throwing his uniform into the wash, and he didn't know how to do it himself. The 2 oldest are about to have a very interesting freshman year in college. Bonus story, when I was in college, I roomed with a girl who lived like this. Her mum did everything for her to the point where she couldn't function like a normal adult. Like her mum would drive 11 hours to clean this woman's room for her, clean up her used condom wrappers, etc. Her mum would get really snarky with me, like self-reliance was a loser quality, also because it made her daughter look bad. While it's really easy to learn to wash your own clothes, etc., she couldn't do it and just said, "Oh, well, I won't have to. When I graduate, I'm going to get a high-paying job and have everything done for me. I wasn't raised to be domestic like you. Fun fact, I wasn't raised that way. I did my own cooking and laundry because my mum couldn't be bothered to do anything but watch soap operas and Lifetime movies. Fast forward to the present day, guess who couldn't hack taking care of herself after college and had to move back in with her mum? I played football in a local kids league. One kid from another team was basically untouchable as his dad was a major sponsor of the league and would donate money for uniforms, drinks, etc. His son was a pretty good receiver but didn't like getting hit, and his parents made a big deal of leaving their son alone so he can develop his skills. He was insufferable. Anytime he scored a TD, he would do over-the-top celebrations and mock all the other players, his teammates included. Then came high school. Most of the kids in the league ended up in one of two schools. He went to mine. During tryouts, he did well. The coaches were mostly focused on skills and minimal contact during the first round of cuts. The final round was when things got interesting. Full contact was permitted, and he got rocked over and over again. No one was actually trying to tackle any harder than normal, it's just this dude didn't know what to do when he got tackled. So he screamed and cried a lot. He didn't make the team, until his dad came down to the school and offered to donate money for uniforms and some other goodies for our sports teams. So he made the team, and again we were told to take it easy on him a bit. So he did, but the other teams didn't, and he went up against some of the players he mocked previously, and they remembered. Our quarterback kept passing to him, and he was getting repeatedly smashed, over and over again. It was the only time our team cheered for the other team. He quit playing football after that. I can't help but feel bad for Football McChad III. Having your own team root against you and not understanding why everything your dad bought the team didn't help. I wonder if he became more isolated after that. Had a friend in high school whose dad was uninvolved. He was raised middle class like myself and lived with his mum and stepdad. After high school, he worked towards becoming an electrician and was saving for his first apartment. His dad eventually came around when he was right out of high school and started giving him money here and there when he needed it. His dad owned a large company on the East Coast and was a multi-millionaire. Soon his dad convinced him to quit trade work and gave him a job at his business. Shortly after, he was promoted to a managerial position he wasn't qualified for and paid way too much. He'd get drunk while on conference calls and nobody questioned him since he was the boss's son. His dad bought him his first home, almost $500,000, and multiple cars. He took up horse racing and, quickly, we had nothing in common. Gone were the days of dumb teenage stuff, going fishing, hiking, and video games together. He quickly found a girlfriend whose dad was a multi-millionaire. She was 30 and still putting everything on daddy's credit card. I couldn't keep up with their lifestyle and very quickly we faded as friends. After his girlfriend and him broke up, she told me that he was actually severely depressed and almost drove his car off a bridge multiple times. Deep down, he was having issues with wanting to live up to his dad's lifestyle and standards, but losing his old friends and life. It's too bad. I haven't seen him in probably 4 years now. We tried to reconnect a few times, but it just doesn't work anymore. That's really sad. It's like his dad wanted to make up for the neglect with money. A friend of my brother is also very well off. His parents offered him a $175,000 a year job in their family business to basically do nothing. He already lived rent-free in a waterfront apartment, car, credit card, etc. He spent his days doing drugs and partying. He's clean and sober now, but yes, it took years and years of rehab. And even now they offer him too much. He got married and they wanted to make it crazy ostentatious. It was already pretty glam, and he knows to reject it.
What traits in girls do you find attractive or impressive aside from physical appearance, guys? My wife's laughs are literally everything. Sometimes she watches a show on her laptop in our room and I hear her cracking up from down the hall. I absolutely love it. One of the main reasons I started dating my current girlfriend was because she accidentally spilled popcorn in my car after our first date. She profusely apologized and asked if she could clean it up. My car was a POS, so I didn't care. When I got home, she texted me apologizing again. I don't know why, but her caring about spilling popcorn in my crappy car made me realize, hey, maybe she could care about me too. Aw, she spilled popcorn into your heart. Ah man, I had a similar situation except I was the spiller. Third date in a city on a sunny afternoon. Coffee all over her light blue jeans and she just laughed it off. I knew then she had an amazing outlook on life. We got engaged last week. Gotta love people that don't let spilled milk ruin their days. Shows a lot about their character. Accountability. If she can openly admit when she's wrong or that she messed up, that's attractive, as it shows maturity and the ability to judge yourself impartially, and it means you are less likely to repeat the mistake. This also means that you feel for her if not only love, it's respect, which is just as important. Wow, this is fantastic. I've dated girls in the past who would never just say, "I was wrong, I shouldn't have done that, I'm sorry." I get that it's hard sometimes, but it's relieving to admit wrongdoing and ask for forgiveness. But when you obsessively chase not having done wrong in the first place, it's actually a tax on both parties. I 100% agree with this. I'll take it a step further by saying when you text or call a woman and she doesn't answer but later says, "Hey, I'm sorry I couldn't respond, I got caught up with insert reason here," instead of just saying, "I was busy," it shows that they respect you enough to let you know that there was a real reason they couldn't respond. This is nice because they don't owe you an explanation of why they didn't respond, but them doing so shows an amount of caring on their part. Things like confidence, a good sense of humor, intelligence, all of that is super important. But for me, the sexiest thing a woman can do is be calm. Not calm as in quiet, as in calm when crap goes sideways or something unexpected happens. Having someone who is reliable and stable as a partner is so crucial in life. I didn't realize how attractive that sounds until I read it. To not have to burn calories on dealing with my partner and the situation, that's so hot right now. It's probably one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from my father. He explained that when every possible thing goes wrong, the last thing you want is a partner that makes it even harder by panicking, getting angry, or making things worse. Plus, the tenacity, toughness, and resilience, it's freaking sexy. Don't get me wrong, I love taking care of a lady as much as the next guy, but when a girl just buckles down and solves a problem in a cool, collected manner, man, that's an instant spiritual and physical boner. Spiritual boners are some of the best boners. I'm loving this thread. My wife is baseline stressed and an anxious person. She's always doing a lot of stuff for her career and taking on way too much. So I feel like the calm caretaker a lot of the time. However, in times of crisis, she locks in and is such a calm and collected source of comfort. I had one horrible disc herniation a few years back that resulted in such bad pain I was writhing and screaming in agony. She called an ambulance, explained what was happening, and made sure I was sorted. She called my parents, handled them, and made sure everything I needed, I had. She was an absolute rock star. I can't describe how grateful I was and how taken care of I felt. From there, we sort of realized that the day-to-day maintenance I'm better at, but in times of crisis, she's second to none. I'll never forget that though. I never felt so loved and cared for in my life. Anxiety can be a superpower. It's the fear of the unknown that affects the anxious. So you're constantly worried about what's going to happen and thinking through different scenarios in your head, etc. Then when an emergency happens, you just lock into problem solver mode because you run through these drills in your head 1,000 times before. It's awesome that you guys found each other to balance things out. As someone who has been diagnosed with panic disorder and severe anxiety, I can confirm that when crap hits the fan, I'm on my toes and ready to handle the situation. Not exclusive to girls, but having a hobby or interest that they are very knowledgeable and passionate with, that's great. Even if it's something super benign like painting their nails or baseball, I just love people who can ramble on about their interest, especially if I'm not into it. It's like peeking into another world. Knew a girl that was into knitting, but not just like I knew how to cross stitch. Full on had a setup where she would turn wool into yarn and even had a favorite small sheep farm that she would order from exclusively. She was interesting as hell to me. Exactly. So many times I'll ask a woman, hell, this applies to men just as much, what does she do for fun? And it's almost always scrolling through social media or Netflix. I'll rephrase the question, asking about any sort of active or creative hobbies they do when they aren't relaxing. And it's like they don't understand the difference. You're not wrong that there are a lot of people that spend their free time doing those things, but also in my experience, many people's minds seem to go blank on the specific question. I'm not totally sure why though. This is weird, but I've had success with asking this question. Pretend you have an unexpected week-long staycation starting tomorrow. What are you going to be doing this week? Then they'll tell you about projects, art, home improvement, pets, and things that they've been working on or wanting to get a chance to do. Or maybe they just don't and they're actually not interested in anything other than TV and social media. Either way, you've learned something about them. Critical thinking skills are hot. I would adjust this to curiosity. Curious people who investigate, inquire, and show genuine interest often use critical thinking as a byproduct. I say this impresses me in anyone. When managing people, if I have a curious employee who wants to know why something works the way it does, or wants to find a tool or technology to improve, they are always earmarked for career investment. In women, finding a curious person means that you will be able to find someone who will likely not bore you over the long haul, because curiosity as a personality trait means that she's the type of person to engage in things that are important and keep away that every day is the same creep that tends to infiltrate a relationship. And for clarification for those who say, well, dumb people can be curious too, I think those are missing my meaning. I mean more intellectually curious, and less, what does this electrical socket taste like? I find a woman's voice to be one of the best factors in determining if I'm attracted to a woman. Do you mean like accent, pitch, tone, all of the above? All of the above and what she says. A woman can look stunning, but in opening her mouth she reveals who she truly is. To know if a woman is intelligent, funny, angry, depressed, or even sexy, I don't need to see, I need to hear. Above all else, as a man, I try to listen. The second best advice I ever got about dating was to get the other person to talk, to ask leading questions. The first, of course, is to make them laugh. And a woman's laugh will reveal so much about them. Authenticity and genuine character do not look anything like I've ever seen, but I can hear them. Here's the answer I was looking for. I was a phone hookup operator for over a decade. I initially went into it because random dudes would just go nuts over my voice all of the time. I'd call in for customer support on my phone, and the tech guy would ask for my number, and things like that. I still sell my voice for a living, but not in the hookup industry anymore. My clients are all women now, but even though they aren't attracted to me intimately for the most part, I still get comments on my voice. Tons are surprised by my age too. I'm 46, but I still easily sound like I'm in my 20s. I can confirm a nice voice will win me over quickly. Same goes for nice eyes and a good smile. Intelligence. Good looks only go so far when you realize she doesn't even know basic life skills. If they can't have an interesting conversation, then why would you want to spend years with that person? I understand if you're looking for a short-term physical encounter. However, if you are looking for a long-term relationship, the ability to communicate is paramount. 100% agree. The girl I dated before my wife was hot, like smoking hot. Her hobbies were basically working out and eating like a rabbit. Hands down the most physically attractive girl I ever dated. But that was it, nothing more. She never had anything interesting to say, never had an opinion on anything, never laughed at jokes or funny movies. She was just void of personality and took no pleasure in the joys of life. I eventually had to break it off. Now my wife, on the other hand, is the polar opposite. She's beautiful, but she's just a normal human. She's the funniest person I know. She knows what's going on in the world and is driven to make it a better place. And most importantly, she's been extremely supportive of me, and she's the one person I know I can talk about anything with. It's like having a best friend that I can play no-clothes games with. Years ago, I had been dating a girl who was getting a degree in neuroscience. Even though I wasn't a scientist of any sort, I loved talking to her and listening to her go on and on about the brain and the central nervous system. Not only was she smart, but she was passionate and interesting. We split up when I moved to Los Angeles without her. One night, I was at a bar with a friend, and I was talking to a girl who had moved to LA to be a singer. I asked her something like, "So, you're a singer, eh?" And then this girl responded by launching into a full-voiced version of "I Will Always Love You" in the middle of the bar. In that moment, I vividly remember thinking, I miss my neuroscientist. 2 weeks later, I took a plane to the East Coast, called her up and wooed her from her new boyfriend. She moved to SoCal and got her PhD in neuroscience. We got married and have 3 awesome children. She still blows my mind when she talks about her work. I find women that are the complete opposite of me hella attractive. Not sure why, but at least on 3 separate occasions, I have been attracted to nurses that I knew and were friends with. I want to make movies and write comic books, so we're totally opposite. But with one of these women, I remember it like it was yesterday. We were driving to a show to watch a band in another city, and on this hour-long drive, she turned sideways in the passenger seat, like her back was against the passenger door. Probably unsafe even though she was still wearing her seatbelt. And she just looked at me and listened to me while we were driving to this show. It was one of the best freaking interactions I've had with a woman because she just felt present in that moment. Went on a date last week and the woman never took her phone out of her purse. Super hot. If she doesn't take her phone out of her purse, how is she supposed to show you 300 pictures of her cat? How they treat themselves, self-care, how they treat others, friendship, how they work with others, collaboration, what they enjoy learning, curiosity, and what they enjoy doing, creativity. Intelligence, confidence, self-awareness, empathy, creativity, education. Also being pet-friendly is a big plus. So basically anything you'd like from a decent human being. Being emotionally intelligent and mature, which includes having kindness and empathy, etc., can go a long way as it shows me that you're capable of being a decent human being towards myself and others, and that you won't be someone that I have to be careful around. Bonus points if I get the vibe that you're a chill person. Enthusiasm, boundaries, responsible for herself, allows her to be challenged in her thinking, enough backbone to keep me honest when I'm wrong. Being self-sufficient. I don't want to date a dependent. When my wife and I were dating, one of the things that made her stand out was that she was totally self-sufficient. She didn't need help, nor did she expect it. We dated for almost 2 years before making the decision to move in together, and that was mostly on confluence of circumstances. She wanted to live on her own because it was freedom for her. Man, I feel that. My wife is completely self-sufficient. She's better educated and makes more than me. She does not need to be with me, but she is. And it feels great that someone who doesn't need me chooses to stay with me. Being with an independent woman is super hot because you know for the fact that she doesn't need you at all. So knowing that she is with you because she wants to be is super hot. Bit of a simple one here, but I love when a girl can sing. My wife claims that she can't carry a tune in a bucket, but when she sings, it's beautiful sounds to my ears. And I feel I have a responsibly good judgment on vocal quality. When we have a couple of drinks, I get my guitar out and can occasionally convince her to sing a few songs with me. It's one of my favorite things to do. The same traits I look for in my best friend. General vibes need to be on point, thoughtful, kind, sassy. I'm perfectly happy single, so my partner needs to add to my life and make sure our time together is more valuable than my time alone. If she's got a dark sense of humor, I like women like I like my chocolate Easter bunnies, dark, bitter, and with a gnarly hollowness inside that can never be filled. Someone with equivalent levels of apathy and laziness, but about areas of life that complement my own apathy and laziness. That way one of us will always let the freaking dog out or put the kettle on. But I don't feel too guilty for saying so for Saturday. I'm not getting dressed. Been married 16 years. Perfect. I'm not a guy, so I don't count. But I like when girls are genuinely kind and have good banter. Like you can be cheeky and funny and a little sassy, but I still like a nice girl. I've always been attracted to those kind of girls in the room. I can agree with this. I like a woman that can get along with my male friends. Also my female friends, because if she can't, that's a red flag. But I don't want her to be one of the boys, like many guys say they want. I want her to be her own unique self. I want her to be the reason I don't want to be around my boys all the time. I saw a girl riding a fixed bike in the city and doing bunny hops with the bike at the intersection to stay upright. I had only just started riding my bike again, and I was just so impressed with the skills. Optimism. I'm a bit of a pessimist at times. I fall into nihilistic thinking a lot. Good to have someone who could look to our future with a positive light. Adventurous. Being willing to put yourself at risk of humiliation, danger, or failure when encountering new activities is attractive. I will say I definitely like an adventurous woman, or at least someone who wants to plan out and try new things. I often get lost in my work, and it's nice to have someone to invite you out to do things. When I dated my ex, the one thing that constantly made me fall in love with her was just her ability to just get excited to talk about anything. I loved seeing her just get excited about either the littlest thing or whatever was on her mind that day. Enthusiastic or interested in me. That is so reassuring to have. Also for her to have some hobby or activity, whether it be tennis or an instrument or Dungeons and Dragons or theater. Something she's passionate about would be nice. If her principles and values are similar to mine, it's a way to minimize unnecessary discussions and keep harmony while enjoying each other's company. When she's not afraid to get her hands dirty, kill a bug or two, or unclog a toilet. I'd like to add, and she likes to wash her hands after. It's exhausting to be in a relationship with someone who constantly requires reassurance, praise, and affirmation. Know your worth, and if others don't recognize it, move on and find a relationship with people who do. I understand what you mean, but keep in mind that praise, affirmation, and reassurance is absolutely something that everybody needs and wants. I'm sure there's some experience behind your comment, but it's about finding a balance between knowing your worth and being with someone who empowers that understanding. For some people, their own worth is easier to understand with a bit of outside help. There are a lot of traits that I find attractive, but the one I absolutely love is bravery. And by bravery, I don't mean just doing outlandish things and acting foolish. By bravery, I mean brave enough to confront what's wrong, brave enough to acknowledge her mistakes or shortcomings, brave enough to take on challenges and negative situations head on. I will never date a girl without all of these. Number 1, friends. Number 2, well-defined interests or hobbies, preferably ones that involve more than just looking attractive. I'm talking even simple things like their own established favorite music, movies, etc. And number 3, something equating to a career or career goals. I don't care if it's school or working in customer service at an office or rising up the ranks at a retail store, but something with intent. And frankly, I think most of the things that other people are saying in this thread, things like confidence, intelligence, sense of humor, etc., are all easier to find in people who have these 3 things. They're basically just cornerstones of having an actual independent personality. Basically, I've dated far too many women whose entire personality, self-worth, and motivation are simply being a girlfriend. Sometimes I just feel like I like everyone. My standards are almost non-existent. If I spend more than a few hours every day for like 3 weeks with someone, I'm at risk at falling in love, because I don't do that crap for anybody. I had to address this same situation today actually. I had to tell a girl that I'm friends with that I needed some distance because goddamn, we were talking a lot and I started catching feelings. Man, I don't like that. That's some scary crap right there. Girls who like sports, and not in the name the 1986 World Series champs. Just like to shoot hoops or play in the rec league or play pickleball with some friends and throw the football on the beach or something. That's hot. The ability to be one of the guys. I like a cute, pretty, pampered princess as far as the looks. I'll admit I'm a sucker for an innocent girly girl look, but I'd rather have someone I can take out on insane adventures and go do stupid crap like fireworks or play video games and swear at each other while we make hookup jokes. Just that comfortable personality where I don't have to impress her and I could just be me. I get the understanding with the be one of the guys things, but do you ever think these guys just want to date their guy friends? If a girl has a talent or a skill that took time and dedication and still interests them, it's incredibly attractive. Like if I'm not physically attracted to someone, then I find out that they play bass guitar or super into making pottery or something, they instantly become very attractive. Any girl who can calculate the homogeneous linear second-order differential equation with the regular singular point would make me melt in a second-order solution. The last 2 girls I dated had one major thing in common. The first, we were having a discussion, a friendly argument about philosophy, and she was holding her own. Then I said something, don't even remember what, and she said, "That's not even close to what the book says. You know, I have it right here. I can take it out and prove you wrong." I had a boner so hard that I had to look away and think about my grandma. The second, a jokingly silly argument, which I tend to be good at. She won, I had no rebuttal. I love girls who are smarter than me and they have the balls to prove it. That's just so hot. As someone else said, critical thinking is fantastic, along with being secure with herself, emotionally stable and independent. I'm so over the fragile, clingy girl that worships me as a means of seeking validation. No, I'm not being cocky in saying that. Anyone who has been there knows it's less about me and more about the other party seeking what they're missing, and being discarded for the next shiny object that's likely to come. The ability to hold her ground in a debate and push back and not fold in conversation when her heart knows that she's right. A girl who has balls is hot. Hey, yo!
What disgusting secrets does your employer keep from its customers? The fajitas sizzle because we pour oil and water on a hot plate, not because we grilled anything. My whole life is a lie. Former employer was charging clients for a WAN backup solution that wasn't even running. I was still actively developing it when I quit. Client called up and asked to see the records of the backup. I said it wasn't running and that we didn't have any to my knowledge. Client flips out, calls boss flips out at me for not lying. Screw that noise. I used to work in a major movie theater and we would recycle hot dogs. Basically, if the links were on the spinning rack all day and didn't get purchased, they would be thrown in a bucket and refrozen. We poked a fork hole in one to see how long it would stay on rotation. 7 freaking days. Worked for a self-storage place in Rocklin, California. They made every customer sign a lease agreement that said that you wouldn't hold them responsible if your unit was broken into and things were stolen. I found out that we had 7 to 8 burglaries a year. The owners would get sued, but they would always get off because they produced the lease agreement in court and the judge would dismiss the case. One day, I came in from vacation to pick up my paycheck, and I found the owner and the manager loading up a truck with the contents from a unit that wasn't theirs. I went around the corner to an area where the fence allowed me to look in, and saw that they went to another storage space, cut off the lock, and proceeded to load up the truck with a telescope, big screen TV, and some power tools. I came back the next day and asked one of my coworkers. He told me that the owners of the storage space would sell the stuff they stole from renters, and that the manager and the owner did the same thing with another property that they owned in Granite Bay. I quit to go back to Sac State. I called the Rocklin cops to tell them what the owners were doing, and they said that there was nothing they could do unless they were caught in the act. Tim Hortons Smile Cookies. Pay an extra $1 for a chocolate chunk cookie with a smile drawn on it. All proceeds go to local charity. Unfortunately, store owner would just go into the system, void all cookie sales, and replace them with regular chocolate chunk cookie sales. A small business owner for whom I worked several years ago kept deducting the employees' health insurance premiums but never sent the payments in to the carrier. After 2 to 3 months of this, our insurance was canceled right before one lady's teenage son was in a fairly serious car accident. She finds out at the emergency room, during what is of course an extremely stressful time, that she has no insurance whatsoever when she and her dependents have been fully covered. The next day she went into his office, very upset, to find out what happened. He gave his usual song and dance and made excuses for not having been able to send it in, and this normally mild-mannered lady picked up a stapler and threw it at him. He wasn't even injured. While doing that was, of course, unacceptable, I totally understood her frustration with this weasel. He spent thousands of dollars a month of company money, coding it to company expenses, at Sam's Club on groceries and big-ticket items for his house, on top of his already generous salary. Then, to top it off, he actually took her to court for the stapler-throwing incident. After hearing the story, the judge dismissed the weasel's case and made a comment to the effect that if he were in the same position as her, he probably would have done the same thing. Used to sell cars at a major dealership. The unofficial sales contest was to see how much over MSRP they could sell the car for by confusing the customer on the price with payments and financing, manipulation of trade value, and sometimes outright fraud, like promising manufacturer rebates then not applying them. The winner, quote-unquote, for the 2 months I was there was over by $10,000, selling a car that should have been about $20,000 for over $30,000. The sad part is, the customer might never even know because they still got the payment they wanted. Please do yourself a favor and don't shop solely based on payments, and if you are financing, then make sure you are aware what the final selling price of the car is. There is a major difference between $400 a month at 60 months at 0% interest and $400 per month at 84 months at 0.9%. I used to work at Frisch's as a hostess, busser, drive-thru attendant. That place was filthy and corrupt as heck. No one in the kitchen wore gloves, and the cooks loved making people eat old food or food that had been dropped on the disgusting floors. The manager loved to steal the waitress's tips and blame the customers or the sketchy-looking bussers. The most corrupt thing the awful manager did while I was there was around Christmas time. He would take $100 out of each of the new/younger employees' cash drawer, call your parents saying that their kids stole the money and they needed to be brought in to be questioned. When I went to work the next day, I found out the same crap happened to a few of the others. We all got angry and snagged the key that locked the box to the camera controls, rewinded to the following day, and watched until we saw the jerk start doing his thing. Every single one of us reported him. He got insta-fired. It was glorious. TLDR, Frisch's is gross and my old manager was a corrupt jerk. I worked for a vet in Vancouver and I ran a whole month of raffles, nail cuttings for donations, and pet pics with Santa for the SPCA. When we added up the last of the money from the month, I put it in the safe. The practice owner's wife deposited the money and bought herself some new Chanel makeup. What the frick? I quit in disgust. We have a roach problem, and gnats are everywhere. Customers can see the gnats flying around the salads, fruits, and pies we have out, but I guess it doesn't disgust them enough to not come back. More than a few times, customers have complained about bugs in their drinks that ended up there after they died in our ice machine. The worst was a live cockroach in someone's salad that was on the fork as they went to take a bite. Whole cooked turkey breasts and roast beefs have been dropped on the floor and served without any of the managers and employees giving two craps. I've realized most restaurants are so much more dirty than shown, but I've eaten out my whole life. I guess my consolation is that I'm probably building up some immunities to all the ickies out there. I used to work for a local children's charity where a good majority of the money was skimmed to pay for the owner's for-profit business. I worked for a popular national pet store chain. We told our customers that we got our puppies from, quote, reputable breeders and not puppy mills. We got them from puppy mills, and I can't express how many came in on the back of a large, pitch-dark freight truck, malnourished, scared, and sick. We also adopted the cute kittens from the local shelters and charged customers outrageous amounts of money, most of whom just felt bad for the kittens. Don't support national chain pet stores that sell puppies that do not come from local shelters, folks. If you want a dog or a cat, then please adopt. Or find a stray, take it to a vet and adopt him or her. Also, donate whatever you can to local shelters. Food, toys, beds, money, etc. They could really use it. I just want to say that if you have ever worked at a water park, it will turn you off of visiting any kind of public pool or park for the rest of your life. The things we pulled out of those filters, man. No. Just pour so many chemicals into the water that literally nothing can live in it and call it a day. Macy's doesn't donate anything to charities. They practically force their employees to and claim it as company donation. I worked at Dairy Queen. The collection box supporting children with cancer hanging out in the drive-thru window was a discontinued charity. My manager pocketed all the donations. Disgusting in a different sense. Back when I was a warehouse manager for a major office supply chain, one of my duties every month was to gather items from our inventory that were selected by corporate to be donated to local charities. All items would be collected, scanned, placed on pallets, and loaded onto the trucks to be delivered to the charity distribution center. After a few months, I started to notice that some of the donation items that should have been shipped out mysteriously ended up missing or being used in my general manager's office. I later discovered that on the days that the donation items were collected, my manager would send me out for lunch and revert the scans on whatever donation item he desired in order to keep it for himself. I eventually caught him in the act as I returned early from lunch, and needless to say, he was not able to come up with a good excuse. Instead, he insisted that I take my pick of whatever I wanted from the pallet. I was so disgusted that I immediately put in my 2 weeks notice during the busiest time of the year and filed a complaint with corporate. My last job, we held events and refilled premium liquor with house crap. And during events, charged consumption tabs with 100 plus people, extra shots and bottles that were never ordered so the event holder can pay for something never even used at the end of the night. And that's just scratching the surface. My boss refuses to hire anybody but white women, and he uses rubbing alcohol to wipe the expiration date off of product if it expires. He just puts it back on the shelf, including dairy product. I hate him. For reference, this was 9 years ago, so hopefully he's been fired at this point. This happened years ago, but I was a receptionist for a chiropractor for about 6 months. One day, our first appointment came in. I went in the back to look for him. I walked in on him screwing a coworker on the table, the same table the patients sometimes would lay face down on. I went back to the front and said, "He'll be with you in a couple minutes." God, I was disgusted. He was married with 2 young kids. I didn't work there long after that. Worked store security. There are peepholes about the ladies' changing rooms at several major retailers. Supposed to be for female security agents to monitor the dressing rooms, but we had no female security agents. Lots of creepy voyeurism / self-pleasure going on. Private company I no longer work for. The company list of vehicles included 2 four-wheelers, a Corvette, a Hummer II, a brand new Jeep, and oh right, a 20-foot fishing boat. Also frequently bought company furniture which he would then sell to himself. Government contractor and a weasel. Okay, this really took off and I'd like to clarify a few things. If you have a small business and your cars are company cars and your office is in your home, power to you. Starting a business takes a lot of work. The main problem that I had with this guy was his general selfish nature and lack of respect for anyone. I can't go into details, but there were 2 big projects going on at the company at the same time. One under the government was defense-based, the other which was an invention that he held the patents for was aerospace. He used every trick in the book to siphon the government contract money into the private project so that he could reap the benefits, generally treated employees like dirt, and was just such an unbelievable jerk. I recently worked for another government contractor and my boss there was nothing less than stellar. Using a throwaway. The company I worked for had to maintain a trust account where money owed to clients was kept and then they were paid out of it. There was a small lag of about 30 days between when the money came in and when it was sent to the client. This was a highly regulated industry. For more than 3 years, the company hadn't been paying their clients and had been fudging the books. I found this out when I was told to stop sending reports that showed clients were owed money. I pressed management and found out they had been lying to clients for well over 3 years. And one client was owed $1 million. I should also point out that in this particular industry, this client was in the top 3 in the nation. We're talking about thousands of companies owing tens of millions of dollars. I was instructed to lie to the clients until they were so fed up they threatened to sue the owners, then they would get paid. This was common knowledge in the business. It was openly discussed with customer service. Until I filed a formal complaint with the regulatory agency, none of the more than 100 employees had ever reported them. Not one. And I know why too. After I gave proof to the regulatory agency and quit, they swooped in and seized the company books. And all of my allegations were true. Instead of filing criminal charges against the executives involved, the regulatory agency just fined them and then made them pay back the missing money to the trust. No one was charged with the crime, no one lost their job, no one was put on probation. Absolutely nothing happened to those responsible, and the only consequence is that they have to have regular audits. Screw the government. I worked for a gelato shop that made us dig through the so-called recycling bins to fish out used plastic cups and spoons to wash and give to new customers. Even if the spoons had bite marks from other customers and were coated in chewing gum, we were told to wash them up and only had to throw them out if they were really unpresentable, because these things are expensive. Furthermore, all the other stuff in the recycling bin that people so good-heartedly placed there, yeah, all of it got thrown in the dumpster. Customers ate it up and told us regularly how glad they were that we were a green business who cares about the environment enough to recycle. It didn't take long before I just couldn't keep doing this with a clean conscience, and I turned them into the health inspectors, who were obviously horrified that this was happening. About 2 months later, I got laid off and the business closed its filthy doors forever. They leave sites like Reddit unblocked just to see who is slacking and fire them. One of the few benefits of performance-based jobs is that as long as you're getting your crap done, you can throw that right back into their faces. A few years ago, was working as a call center drone, and the boss of my boss sent me an email regarding the amount of non-work-related internet usage from my computer. I just sent him a metric spreadsheet showing that I was, by far, his most productive employee. Didn't even write anything in the email. Never heard anything else about it. I worked as a supervisor at a water park, and just before inspection by the owner, the director had me go around the park and paint all the rusted metal silver to look like new. Some of those bolts were nearly rusted through and were crucial to the ride's construction. Valet here. I've seen a number of occasions in which rubbing compound was used to cover up mild to moderate scratches. Coworkers have stolen things out of cars, from spare change to a handgun on one occasion. If valet is an option, don't do it. Just want to add, I've never stolen anything out of someone's car. Also, yes, all valet companies are different, just like not all restaurants spit in your food. I valeted my car one time. I thought, nah, they won't steal my stuff. Wrong. They stole lots of stuff. I used to work at Victoria's Secret. We are required to refund and take back any used underwear as well as everything else in the store. It would then immediately go back on the sales racks even if it had obviously been worn. I showed my manager a used pair of pink panties that had a disgusting smell that resembled tuna, and she advised me to just spray perfume on it. I didn't quit immediately because I needed the money. Instead, I would grab a pair of scissors from the back and accidentally cut the ones that I knew had been used, so they had to damage them out and not sell them. I work in designer clothing retail. The clothes are quite expensive, and the assistants are required to only wear full-price garments. So we, the whole team, just pick clothes off the rack, wear them all day, including lunch and bathroom breaks, and at the end of the shift, replace the tags and put the clothes back on the shelf for the customers to buy at full price. I know I was grossed out my first day there. If you come into Geek Squad with a computer under warranty, we are required to at least perform a $70 diagnostic on the computer before sending it out for repairs. If viruses are detected, that price goes up to $190 for the removal. I have had to remove viruses from a client's laptop and then send the laptop off to get the hard drive replaced. Also, $30 RAM installations are per stick of RAM. Seriously. One time our department was doing poorly in sales, so they brought in a specialist to give us an after-hours training session. He opened up with, if anyone is stupid enough to walk through those doors looking for a repair, they deserve to be charged $189 for it. I hated that place. In the store I work at, the warehouse is a complete fire hazard. The electrical boxes are screwed, and things get thrown on them all the time. In the way it's set up, if there was a fire, we'd be boned. There's wood by all the ceiling sprinklers, which would absorb most of the water, and pretty much all our fire extinguishers are several years past expiration. I'm highly considering calling a fire marshal. We can see you. I look after instant photo booths remotely. I see all your stupid faces, all of them, every day. I changed the name of a sushi roll from the Ultimate Roll to the Miami Heat Roll and raised the price to $17. Instantly became the bestseller. That's not disgusting. That's marketing. Kudos. And this happens all the time. It's genius, not horrible. Take a look at what bars do. They'll have a special drink in which they have taken another drink and renamed it for double the price. After graduation, one of my roommates from undergrad went on to the University of Texas at Austin to do a master's degree in advertising. At first, he was super excited because the program there at UT was the best of its kind in the country, and he really liked Austin. However, by the end of it, he had totally changed his outlook on advertising and actually ended up going into a different industry. Apparently, his last semester there, the students in his program had to do an internship with a real company and help them come up with an advertising campaign. One of his friends at the program was really excited because he had gotten his internship with Jack Daniels. However, their view on advertising was completely shattered when his bosses at Jack Daniels literally told the guy to go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and figure out what they would have to do to get those people drinking again. I once worked for a small retirement home that was owned by a church. I was the night watchman, and during the night, I could smell the odor of feces wafting down the halls. Everyone could. And the nurses at the nurse stations would typically wait until their mandatory rounds times to deal with it. So they basically let residents lay in their fecal matter. I'd say about 10% of nurses actually give a dang about the residents. All the other ones are just there to get paid. I will never go into a nursing home. Okay, as somebody who's worked in elder care for a while, let me explain. There is no such thing as truly great elder care in a retirement home, unless you pay a crapload of money or go into a 24-hour facility in Thailand or the like, because there you get one-on-one care. There's decent care, where the patient's basic needs are met and they're cared for the best that the understaffed nurses can manage. And then there's awful care, where the old people are lucky if they get their diaper and urine bottles changed more than once a day. It's not possible to give people with dementia or impaired bodies all the time that is necessary when you're understaffed and underpaid and are barely able to rush through the important stuff that needs to be done. You've got women and men crapping themselves at least 3 times a day, and if you're really unlucky, it's the same person every time, and you run out of clothes for them to wear and stick them in a nightshirt, and that is, of course, the first day in 3 months that the relatives decide to visit and get angry because why is their mother, father, or uncle in bed before tea time? Which is all fine. It happens. You deal with it and move on. But every time you need to change somebody or clean somebody or help somebody to the toilet, it throws you back between 10 minutes and half an hour, and that's time that some other patient would have needed. And what you can't finish isn't picked up by your colleagues because they're equally behind. Because you're 5 people for 35 patients and they all need at least 3 hours of your time, which is 2.5 more hours than you can give them. If you're lucky, you gave everybody the right pills and the right food and the right kind of diaper so that they won't get open sores on their butt. And if you miss something ultra necessary, you better hope the next shift catches it. Because if not, it's you on the line, and the excuse Mrs. X pooped her pants and put her hands down her underwear and smeared it on the wall of the hallway and I had to do damage control is not going to fly with anybody. And let's not even get started on what happens when a medical emergency happens, because instead of running to the MRSA infected patient who's been in hospital 3 times in the last 2 months and has been dying for even longer, you walk slower and are relieved when they're dead, because now they won't have to slowly wither away in pain. I worked overnight dairy at Walmart for a few years after I moved, had 7 years total with the company, and hated every minute of it. So in the dairy, we often get returns, stuff that has been left out in the store, and it's our job to put it back up. No thought is given to how long these things have been left out. They're put into a cart and wheeled into the cooler. It doesn't matter if it's a gallon of milk that has been sitting out 5 minutes or 5 hours. It goes back into the cooler and probably back on the shelf. This is done in the name of expediency, which is what drives every policy at Walmart. Things don't get done right, they get done fast. So with milk, if a dairy employee finds it outside the cooler, it probably goes on a return pallet, because we know better than to put room temperature milk back in the cooler, and the store gets a refund on milk we send back to the milk company. Not so with regular employees, who, as they are trained, put it in a basket, wheel it into a cooler, and hand it off to the next guy, who probably is getting crap from his manager to get this stuff back on the shelf. Eggs? Eggs come in with general freight. They don't do returns on eggs. Once again, if a dairy employee picks them up, they probably get ditched in the giant bin of milk, eggs, flour that sits outside the cooler and ferments and smells terrible, but at least it's a good 5 feet from the candy bins, so it's not like any cross-contamination is possible, and never see the shelf. However, same thing as the milk. It could be sitting out for a week. It'll get put on a cart and wheeled back to a cooler, and someone will yell at someone else until it gets put back on the shelf, because nobody likes getting yelled at. While working there, I came down with food poisoning on at least 3 occasions, none of which I was allowed to go home. I walked out on the 3rd after I puked in a mop bucket, told my manager about it, and then found out that mop water, which was probably a day old in the first place, was used to mop the cooler because nobody ever told the employee on duty to change the water. This is ignoring their terrible policies regarding how they treat employees and train management. Don't buy food at Walmart because it might be cheap, but you're getting what you pay for.
Parents, at what point did you realize you raised a monster? Hello, this is the story of my son Felix. I am from Sweden, so I am sorry if my English is bad. Felix is 6 years old and Julia is 4 years old in this story. I can start with an incident that made me wonder how I raised my son. So me, Felix, and his younger sister, Julia, were on a camping trip through the north of Sweden when my son, from nowhere, just starts to scream, "I will kill you, Julia!" And after he starts to pray to God. No one in my family is religious, and that is what makes me uncomfortable. I ask him, "Felix, what's going on?" And he answers, "Julia wouldn't let me play with her hair." The whole trip I would always check out what Felix was doing because I could just feel his anger of something. I couldn't put my finger on what until 5 years later, 2017, when the same thing happened again. Me and my wife had just picked up the kids from school and let them play upstairs while we're cooking food, and then from nowhere we hear the loudest scream saying, "I will kill you, Julia!" So I ran upstairs as fast as I could. When I came up to my room the kids were playing in, I saw my daughter laying on the floor bleeding from her hair, and beside her, my son is sitting praying to God with blood on his hands. We're so confused, my son had pulled so hard in his sibling's hair that she had lost hair and started bleeding. That is the most creepy thing I've seen in my life so far. When I ask my son what he has done, he answers me with the most chilling voice I will ever hear. "Julia wouldn't let me play with her hair, Dad." About 2 weeks after the incident, I asked Felix why he pulled her hair. He said, "The man in my head tells me what to do. I can't choose what to do." My son is getting help and my daughter is fine. I had to buy security cameras because he was stealing, throwing parties, doing illicit substances in my home, etc. He looked right in the camera and flipped me off while I was at work. My heart fell. I'll ask my 18-month-old if she poo-pooed and she'll smile and say, "Yeah." Then when I put her on the changing table and take off her diaper, no poop. This makes me laugh because the kid isn't a monster, but they've found a surefire way to get attention anytime they want it. And you can be sure they're going to use it. Not my kid, but my partner's adult sister is a real handful. A panoply of vaguely diagnosed mental illnesses, including bipolar and psychosis. She's on income assistance, which helps. But she goes from morbidly depressed in the winter to wildly high in the summer. We let her move in to get herself out of debt, which she did, but now she's back in another hole. She picks bad boyfriends, the last of which we had to get a restraining order against after he threatened our children when we extricated her from his abusive grasp. The worst part is that the cycle is never ending. It's been this roller coaster for 20 years, and we're really, really tired. She's 14 for life, and not the good kind of 14-year-old. Big sister here. My brothers were fighting yesterday in the room beside mine. I'm hearing everything for 20 minutes straight. I'm having a cold and therefore wanted to see if they could resolve it first. The older brother is constantly using his strength, he's strong, fat, and tall, to taunt the younger one. But the older one is a wimp who will sit down if you demand respect. The younger one is even more of a derogative word for a female reproductive organ. I don't really condone using this word, but seriously, that is what he is. This younger is the middle child. They still don't break it up after 20 minutes. I go in there, throw the older one out of the room. He gets out, not before he hits him again. I had surgery on my leg a while ago and still in recovery, so really in no shape to get between them unless I want my other leg to break. The older gets out of the room, then suddenly the middle one gets the courage to beat him up when he's out of the room. I do not touch him but block his exit with both hands to the side of the door. This little psychopath uses all his strength to push on my hands, and I almost fall to the floor. He knows all the pain I've been in from my surgery. I get mad and tell him to stop acting like this, and if he really had the courage and wanted to beat the older one up, he should have done it in the 20 minutes before and maybe earlier. He starts taking his anger out on me, and I've had enough. My headache is so bad at this moment, I close the door and lock with a key by force. He gets out the window and gets in the house via the balcony. Now this is where his horrible and outright scary personality comes to show. Keep in mind he's only 13. I tell him, what is he doing? What does he want? He talks to me condescendingly and tells me just to go back to my room. I'm always in my room, and just tells me to shut up. He starts threatening and speaking to me as if he has any power over me. But the scary thing is how calm and poisonous his tone is. He isn't affected by any of the words I'm saying, and has zero respect to me as a big sister. I'm not demanding any respect, but he doesn't have that love and care we other siblings have for each other. I've always started to notice how he says whatever the heck he wanted, and then makes it into a joke with a cheeky smile. When my dad was going to visit grandma, he told the rest of the family, "He's just waiting on grandparents to die, then he'll be back." I mean, who the frick says that? This was a bit much, but the road my brother is headed on is not a good one, and I'm truly scared for his future. I tried to be a good mother, really, I did. But looking back, the deck was pretty stacked against us from the start. Me and my son grew up poor, and I mean really poor, in the back end of nowhere, and I had to work all the time. I was basically a slave. I certainly got treated like one. For childcare, like I could afford that, I used to leave my boy with the owner of the local store. A fat Jewish guy I got to know, and he did his best looking after him in exchange for the little guy helping out. I suppose it was child labor, but what can you do? One day, I got lucky when some rich out-of-towners suffered a breakdown on the edge of town and came into the store looking for help. They were really impressed by my son's resourcefulness and know-how, and they were obviously upset at his potential being squandered. So they offered to fund his education. The only catch was that it would have to be at a boarding school because there was no schools nearby worth a damn. I knew I would miss him like hell, but this was his big chance and I jumped at it. But when he came back, gosh, how he had changed. The next time I saw him, I'd been kidnapped by sand people, and my sweet boy, who wouldn't hurt a fly when he was young, killed every single one with this lightsaber some idiot had given him. Men, women, and the children too, and he slaughtered them like animals, shaking my damn head. I won't lie, when I got to the punchline here, I was equal parts livid and exasperated. Well done. Well, I had to read it, and now you have to listen, subscribers. Have fun. Love, the narrator. When my youngest moved out, I had always had difficulty with her, but once she was gone, I realized how much of a bully she is. Recently, she got angry when my partner told her to not guilt-trip me, and flipped out and called him scum of the earth, telling me I am a bad mum for being with him when he is so awful to her, saying really horrible things about his children. The thing is that my sweetie is incredible, and everyone loves him, except her because he called her out on her bullcrap and stood up for me. I can't even tell you how many times I've cried because of things she's said or done. My oldest daughter is a sweetheart, and they are polar opposites. I'm concerned there are some mental health issues right now because she has increased her behaviors. Unfortunately, she's off on her own, so I can't do anything but ask her to talk to someone. When she looked me dead in the eyes and poured out her cup of orange juice on the ground. It's age-appropriate boundary exploration, but still monstrous. My son asked me how long he was obligated to interact with me. Well, if you're forcing him to spend time with you, that's a valid question. True. Hated it when my mum would force me to do something I don't like. This seems like a common parenting mistake. Parents start feeling their child is too distant, so they make the whole problem worse by insisting that their child stop doing everything they enjoy and instead do something they hate with their parents. Camping trips, card games, etc. In reality, all this does is reinforce to the child that the parent doesn't care about them. If parents really wanted to grow their relationships with their kids, they've got 3 options. Learn about their hobbies, and see if they're receptive to talking about it and or doing their hobbies with you. If your kid plays a video game, try playing that video game, etc. Show your kids your own hobbies to see if they're interested. Maybe you play guitar or something, and that piques their interest. If not, don't force it on them. Learn to be okay with having a healthy distance between parent and child. If you squeeze too tightly, they'll want to rebel. Make it clear that you respect them and their boundaries, and then you'll have a much stronger foundation to build on once they're out of their rebellious teenage years. My son steals my wife's eyeglasses while she is reading on her phone. She can see up close fine, but anything past 3 feet is a complete blur. He knows this and knows he can get away with taking things off counters and drawing on things if she can't see him. He's 3. When my son's Tamagotchi died, and I was sad because I realized I was the one taking care of it while he was at school and in bed. He abandoned his own Tamagotchi? F him. That's how you raise a quitter. This kid better be taking care of that Tamagotchi whether he wants to or not. Oh my god, he obviously needs to be sent to military school. We may have veered off topic slightly here, I'm just loving how hot and bothered the community was getting over proper Tamagotchi treatment. My sister is raising 2 monsters, my niece and nephew. The whole family knows, even their parents know, but neither of them wants to be a parent and discipline or give consequences for their monsters' actions. My nephew at 7 yelled at my sister at Subway when she asked him to pick out his chips. He screamed, "Shut up, you B-word! I want to frickin' choke you!" He then proceeded to kick the customer nearest to him in the back of the leg. My sister just laughed it off with a defeated, embarrassed look on her face. At my daughter's 3rd birthday party, my niece, 8 at the time, realized she was wearing the jeans she doesn't like, screamed over the birthday song at her parents, and told them to fix it immediately. Well, they couldn't, they had no change of clothes. She flipped out, grabbed the birthday cake and threw it on the ground, then ripped her pants off, threw a present on the ground and stomped all over it. No apology, no consequences. My sister offered to pay to replace the gift. I told her I'd rather she pay to send her kids to therapy. She called me a C-word and said I didn't love my niece and nephew. They're in their teens now and still throw fits if you don't do what they want or let them win, etc. When my brother had his son, Monster Nephew started beating him up around 3. Monster was 9. Monster gave the little boy a black eye. This was the only time he ever got his butt kicked, and after that it stopped. And the only people my monster niece and nephew are genuinely scared of and behave around are my African-American sister-in-law and my Mexican brother-in-law. They've never done anything to them, they're just not white. Anyway, we have secret family get-togethers without inviting them because they always ruin them. We honestly don't like living like this, but we also don't like spending X amount of hours listening to them whine, complain, and scream, and demand things while breaking and destroying our property. And you can't say anything to them and their parents won't say anything. It's upsetting. I dread their future. Not a parent, but a sibling. My sister has become a vain, selfish, unloving sociopath. She treats my mum as a slave, and my mum loves her too much to notice. My mum was talking to her, she got bored and said, quote, "You can leave now." My mum replied with something like, "You can't talk to me like that, you need to respect me," to which my sister replies, "I have no respect for the B-word that cleans my knickers. Leave." I'm in shock. If I said that to my mum, I'd be slapped, but she turns a blind eye to my sister. Not my son, but there was a kid in the playground that my kid was playing with. He was about 5 or 6. If he didn't get his own way, he started screaming and hitting other kids at the playground. I advised my son not to play with him or talk to him since he was being a little crapbag. I didn't say that to my kid. The kid's mum was in the playground, but ignoring her son and loudly playing Pokemon Go. That kid is likely going to turn into a monster, seemingly since he is ignored. My daughter wrote F you and Mama dies with her figure scratched on a piece of paper the other day when we wouldn't let her make lemonade. She's 8. She's gone on rages and destroyed her room before, including throwing furniture around. Not looking forward to her as a teenager. She's in therapy, right? Yes, under medication too. She's much less ragey than she used to be, but catch her when she's tired or in transition and it's still hit or miss. I feel bad for her, and you. I mean, we blame people with mental issues for being jerks, but that's like blaming a sick person for being sick. They need help, and we should give it to them. Good job being a trooper. I dated someone who was a terror as a child and even as a young adult in my earlier life. She is a very sweet and well-adjusted human being now. One of my best friends with a child of her own. There is hope. I do hope the kid gives her a run for her money. It's only fair. I was in court as a plaintiff waiting for my case. They did all the criminal stuff first. One of the cases was this high school senior who had beat the crap out of his 100-pound, 5-foot mum. She was crying as she was refusing to have him home on bail. She was scared of this kid. This was an upper-middle-class family, and the kid looked like he was on his way to a good college. She kept saying he did it every time he didn't get what he wanted. Judge sent him to Monmouth County Jail, not a nice place for an 18-year-old skinny Neebish. Just imagine what's going to happen to him when his fellow inmates find out what he's in for. Oofed. This thread has been a real inflictor of whiplash between the funnier ones and the ones like this. Okay, I need a laugh break, so here's a funnier story. Not the parent, but a brother. When he went to the bathroom and practically fumigated the entire house. The only room that was safe was the basement bathroom, with the door shut and the fan on. He was laughing his butt off for over an hour. Ex-teacher here. My own kids are far from monsters, but I've met some. When I taught preschool, there was a kid who was banned from YMCA camps for his behavior, and they never banned someone before. He brought a plastic, thankfully, knife to school and threatened to cut all of us teachers. Told other kids he would burn their homes down after first setting fire to all their toys. He heard me calming another student who was afraid of bees and mentioning I'm allergic, but I've never been stung because I don't scare bees. He came up, told me he was going to put a wasp nest in my car, lock me in it, and watch me die. He was one of only 2 students expelled from that school in the 15+ years I've been associated with it. His mother still didn't realize her son was a monster. She said she ate lead paint when pregnant with him, but claimed he was just fine. Often parents just cannot or refuse to see their children for what they are. Not a parent, and I won't ever have kids for obvious reasons, but I was the monster. I'm not proud of what I've done, but I can't change the past. I lived with an abusive father who often beat my mother, my sister, and me. He was abusive, physically, beating us, and mentally. My mother said it started when I was 4 months old. My mother always tried to protect us, but wasn't always there. I lived in a home filled with hate and violence and never really learned what love or happiness was. I was a pretty violent child with a lot of anger issues. My mother told me I would often hit my grandmother or her, and when my sister was born, it was even worse. I hated her and wanted her dead because since she was there, I couldn't have nice things anymore. I was 3. I was the kind of child to throw a tantrum because I was not given the present I wanted for Christmas. When I had rooms full of toys and I would throw myself on the floor and scream or even hit people and break items, then act as if everything was normal. It took a turn when my best friend passed away. I was 6 and started being fascinated by death. I pushed my sister in the stairs and tried to kill her a few times. Now, I could have been helped if my mum had accepted that I had a problem, but she refused to think something might not be wrong. With the death of my friend, I was forced by school to see a psychiatrist who realized something was wrong and asked to see me again. I never returned as my mother just didn't want to face the truth. Growing up, I had a lot of anger issues and sent a few of my classmates to the hospital, but when questioned, I didn't remember what happened. It was around 16 my mother realized something was really wrong. I had an argument with her and hit her, then came back a few minutes later and wondered why she was mad. A few days later, my father had cornered me while I was doing the washing up. I grabbed a knife, and if my sister didn't see it and reacted, I know I would have stabbed him, even if I don't remember it. I remember my father screaming at me, but not the knife part. When I realized something was wrong, I asked to see a psychiatrist who told me I had an illness. Now I've changed a lot and seem like a normal person. I'm 23, really close to my sister, and I don't have anger issues anymore. I don't see my father anymore and things seem to be good, except I don't really have feelings. I never did, but I still know what I did was bad. To all the parents out here, if your child acts in a way that is not normal, bring them to a psychiatrist. It's not something to be ashamed of, but someone that is ill won't change by himself. I'm not a parent and likely won't be due to medical conditions, but I fear my younger brother will likely turn into a monster. He's a self-entitled, uncaring, sociopathic, and frankly, violent little prick. He gets away with not doing his homework, playing video games constantly, and refuses to help my dad and I out with stuff. He doesn't do chores and is a lazy butthole. My dad, Lord save him, and I are at our wits' end. A little over a year ago, he threatened to slit my throat in a violent, anger-fueled rage, after hitting me over and over again, punching me in the stomach, and hitting me with a wooden dowel. After I told him to get off his game and do his homework, or I would turn off the internet until he did his homework. He's told me before, on many occasions, that he wished I was never born, that I should have died instead of Mum, who died 2 months prior to this, and that he hates my guts and wants me to die. He told me that if I told our dad, he would kill me and my cat in my sleep. When he was younger, he trapped my oldest cat, who's now since passed on due to old age, underneath the porch and didn't let us know until we found her 3 days later, alive, hungry, and dehydrated. He's thrown my youngest cat in the mud because he was bored and she was annoying him. He threw a book at our elderly dog because the dog was whining and being annoying. He has no care in the world but for himself and his 1.5-year-old cat. He's a monster through and through, and I dread the day my dad finally comes to his senses and sees what kind of monster we've had living in our house. Despite the grimness of this last post, posts like the next one give me hope that perhaps cases like this can be fixed. Not a parent, but the monster, I guess. Well, I got my crap together since college, but that was a crazy crap show before that. When I was really little, I used to not respect anyone, and I didn't understand any boundaries. For example, I destroyed everything that annoyed me and tortured little baby kittens to see how they react. Drowning, for example. My parents tried to teach me how to be responsible with living things, but it took 3 dead cats until I understood how to handle living things without murdering them. I really liked war and destroying stuff, painted weird stuff everywhere, peed into the plants in my room, and built weapons to destroy stuff. I also liked to hurt and terrify my classmates for fun. Went through some therapy, but it was mostly homeopathic crap and giving me those weird alcoholic drinks to calm your kid down. In secondary school, I spent a lot of time harassing the weird kid in our class that had no friends with a group of weird screw-ups. We were perverted as hell as well, and did a lot of dumb stuff in general. I started getting into video games in that time, and I thank God for it saved my insane butt, because in college I made friends through playing all day, and they helped me to understand how normal people behave. Now I got my act together, have tons of friends and a good job, and soon a pretty frickin' great girlfriend. But knowing what's normal and what's not is still a huge problem, especially in areas people don't talk much about, which always gets me in bad situations. I really don't know what my parents think of me, to be honest. They generally talk little and never told me I am proud or anything like that, which I understand, to be honest. I guess they are just happy I'm working on my crap. They could have told me earlier though. I mean, to this day, I had to work out my problems alone. They never talked directly like, hey, you've got to take care of these things. Maybe they don't want to accept the fact that I am indeed crazy.
What hobby is an immediate red flag? Those people who post prank videos on social media. I know someone who does this and it's absolutely a red flag. Same goes for people who base their entire social media presence off getting views and likes. For some reason, I forgot these people exist in the wild. They shop, drive, and are just out and about. Scary stuff. I always assumed people who did this would be normal in real life, but the person who I know who does this type of thing does a lot of the obviously staged and gimmicky videos, which are super cringy. You might expect them to be attention-seeking, but it's actually worse. It's more so that everything is an opportunity for content, and it's like a switch they cannot turn off. There is zero living in the moment. Not to mention major social climbing and obsessing over how many people with blue check marks follow them. Absolute clout chaser. Every person they met, they immediately ask for their Instagram handle because every person they meet is an opportunity to gain a follower. This person is entitled and only sees people for what they can get out of them or use them for. They're very manipulative and obsessed with their image. This using people mentality carried over to personal relationships. In my case, the person I knew was having a full-blown affair with someone they knew that was married, and said that they simply didn't care if they were being a bad person. We're not friends anymore. My husband's best friend from college is a YouTuber who has 800,000 subscribers. Used to be a really cool guy, but if it doesn't create content for him, it's not a priority. He bailed on our wedding last minute. He was supposed to be a groomsman to go do some stupid video with another famous YouTuber. Definitely a red flag. The constant drive for likes and subscribers is toxic and gross. We all graduated to college over a decade ago, and the dude still acts like he's 19 years old. It's kinda sad. At first, we really respected him for blazing his own trail and doing his own thing, and getting out of our hometown, but he's just like every other douchebag influencer on Instagram now. Well, this kinda hits close to home as someone who is a YouTuber. I will say, over the years, I have caught myself getting swooped up in the content life and chasing the numbers, but I don't think I've ever done it at the expense of someone else. I absolutely hate prank YouTubers and met plenty of clout-chasing creators as well. These posts were completely accurate about a decent number of creators in this space. Posting everything, and I mean every single thing, on social media. Knew this one dude from work that did this crap all the time. It was annoying as hell. Unfriended him when I was scrolling through and saw that he posted a selfie of himself on the toilet and used the caption to say, "Poopin'." Animal fighting, dog fighting, bird fighting, using dogs to kill cattle, wanting to see an animal kill another animal at your own amusement, non-documentary of course, seems like a big red flag to me. What about roaming the world unsupervised as a preteen, capturing wild animals in small enclosures, accosting passerbys and demanding that they use their animals to fight your animals? Pikachu, I choose you! Wasting your time arguing with random people on the internet, especially if it's baiting. Well, I disagree. Stalking women and collecting their photos on a mural. That's oddly specific. Oh boy, this one guy, friend of a friend, wannabe photographer. Our friend in common approached me asking if I wanted to do a photo shoot with her. I agreed because I thought it would be fun, and I met him before in social settings. They weren't unclothed or anything, it was all very artsy and not sexy. One thing I found odd was that he asked to do a few headshots afterwards. They had nothing to do with the photos that we had been taking, but I didn't say anything. Fast forward a few months, and the guy and I got closer. Platonic, I was already dating my current partner. He invites me over to look at some footage that he recorded for a project I was doing. I got into his house, everything was normal for a bit. Well, we were talking about my project, and while doing so, he walked over to his kitchen, and I followed him absentmindedly while chatting. Then I stopped dead in my tracks. He had headshots of maybe 25 different girls taped to his fridge. Mine among them. Some had little marks made with markers. I recognized 2 of his exes and a girl I knew he had cheated on his last girlfriend with amongst one of the marks. He noticed I stopped and turned around. He didn't really say anything about it. I snatched my photo and my friend's off the fridge and left. Later, a guy that knew him confessed to me and my friend that the guy had essentially a hit list of girls he wanted to hook up with. He lived in a small town, so most of the girls he wanted got pictures taken by him. It's been a few years now, and from time to time I remember the dread I felt looking at those pictures, with him just standing a few feet away. I felt like I was in a horror movie. This sounds kind of like a setup for one of those stories where he ends up killing everyone that he hooked up with, and they end up finding that he has this box filled with little resealable bags where he puts locks of their hair, or like toenails or something. I don't have any friends that are creepy as that guy in this post, but this story did unlock a memory of mine from a time when a former friend of mine used my phone to search up a girl we met at our job. He ended up saving a bikini pic of this girl and sent it to himself. I would find this out later when my girlfriend at the time was using my phone, and while we were driving, she questioned why I had a bikini pic of a hot girl saved in my photos. As you might assume, this started a huge fight, and there was no way my girlfriend was going to believe my friend was the reason I had this photo. You still suck to this day, Dave. Saw this post yesterday about a guy that uses real mouse hearts and testicles to place them in clear resin cast of Lego men. I don't know what that is, but it's a red flag. Adopting too many kids or animals, especially when you can't afford them. One word, gambling. Casino dealer here, it's almost never a hobby. One of my peers who had a successful career in the medical industry started playing poker religiously a couple years ago, completely out of the blue. As soon as he wakes up, he starts gambling on multiple applications on his phone. He plays every evening, whether it's with friends or just random people. He started with no to low stakes and has worked his way up to higher and higher stake games. He used to be interested in live music, art, gaming, and he would hang out with friends when gambling wasn't involved. He had to move back in with his parents and stop buying herb, a 24/7 habit he had since he was 10 or 12. Not sure if that was related to his addiction of poker, but he won't say why he had to give up so much recently. But still, all he talks about now is when he's going to the casino next. From living in Vegas, I see a pattern of people having bad poker nights and then going to less skill-oriented games to make the money back. A $200 loss can become a $5,000 loss in a few minutes. I used to work at a slot machine casino. It's exactly how you said in that last sentence. Same guest would come every day and complain about the same damn thing. How much money they lost in the last couple of days. Granted, it is smaller amounts than $5,000, but the fact that they complained and still came back the next day was pretty alarming to me. Unfortunately, we weren't allowed to interfere or suggest a break from the casino, unless they came to us or that we saw a crazy change in their behavior. Even worse, we weren't allowed to even talk to them much because our boss said that we were interfering with their stay. It's sad that something that's literally made to be fun is sometimes someone's only income, or debt. You see people fade away spiritually and physically, and you can't do anything about it because the company wants money. Family vlogging. They completely violate children's privacy. Using kids to shore up your own online presence is not okay. There are parents that are pimping their kids on OnlyFans, Patreon, etc. I watched 2 videos the other day exposing people that can buy exclusive picture sets of several 8 to 14-year-old girls who are prominent on TikTok via parent-run accounts. They showed the metrics and their viewers and buyers were like 75% male, between the ages of 23 to 47. Freaking insane. The pictures were blurred in the expose, of course, but the pictures were said to be sexy bikini pics of little tween and teen girls. Disgusting crap. As a person with a kid who didn't even really want kids even, it absolutely blows my mind how easily some people exploit their own children. Like, that is your baby. How screwed in the head do you have to be to put money over their privacy, safety, and dignity of your child? I don't even post regularly innocent family photos of my kid on social media. Outside of like sending direct snaps to my dad or uncle, I'm far too paranoid about the kind of people that might see them. Even though I'd like to think I'm not friends with anyone that would look at my daughter in a predatory way. Damn, that just makes me so freaking angry. When you have a kid, your entire purpose for the remainder of your life is raising them to be the best version of themselves they can be, and protecting them from evils of the world best you can, not sacrificing them to those evils to make a quick buck. Holy crap. Much like prank YouTubers, I've never really been a fan of family vloggers. I've seen a couple, even met Shay Carl once at a convention and he made a video for my sister. Some can be nice people, but I can't ever shake the feeling that there are so many people that want to see other people's kids. Like, scripted television is one thing, but reality TV and online videos that involve kids' daily lives is just weird to me. Collecting blood slides. My friend had one next to his table next to his AC unit. When I asked him about it, he gave me this weird smile and claimed it was for work. I've never had beers with him since. Surprise, mother. If a person is preoccupied with their social media and they don't actually live and communicate in the moment, it's fine if you can communicate about it and make arrangements, but I'm not dating a person in a three-way relationship with Mark Zuckerberg. I would totally be fine with a person that has a heavy social media presence for work, but I would want to be able to set boundaries that work for both of us on it. Yeah, my sister-in-law talks about influencers as if they're her friends IRL. I can't have a conversation without her taking her phone out and showing me someone she followed before they got famous. It's exhausting and honestly awful to talk with her. Her husband, my brother, has suggested she see a counselor about it and believes she genuinely thinks in her head that she knows these people. That, my friends, is what we call textbook parasocial relationships. On a date, casually thinking, well, I guess there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? 4. What? There's 4 ways to skin a cat. Influencing. Back in 1990, we had them. They were called commercials, then infomercials, then the crap became ridiculous. It's such a disturbing phenomena. Was in line at a touristy ice cream shop near me and the line was probably 20 people deep. 3 women approached the counter and asked for samples of various kinds. It was their turn in line, so fine. Next thing you know, one whips out her cell phone and starts making a live video on how they just discovered this place. They spent the next 2 minutes sucking their samples off mini spoons for their fans. People were still waiting in line and we were just like, get out of the way. They never actually ordered anything. For me, these women epitomize idiocy of influencing. They never actually discover anything, but pretend they're the first person to experience things. It's so fake. Yeah, I hate these types of influencers because 1, they do come off as fake, but most importantly, 2, they ruin a lot of awesome places. Like, I don't like the idea of gatekeeping, but sometimes we should gatekeep certain places. And I don't just mean chill, delicious food spots. TikTok and Instagram have definitely ruined a bunch of cool nature spots because this location is a great place for your next photo shoot. Ugh. Someone reading a ton of philosophy can easily be a very good sign, or a massive red flag depending on what specifically they're reading so much of. Shrines to people. When I first met my now late significant other, my son wanted to be sure he wasn't a killer and protect me. We were literally neighbors, so one day we walked to his house and my son said, "Let me see you don't have any pictures of my mom with X's on them." He thought my son meant pictures of his exes. Nope, my kid just wanted to be sure that there was no shrine of me somewhere with my face crossed out with Sharpie markers. Running an MLM or being an admin, aka dictator, of a local area Facebook group. Dude, I'm one of the mods for our local Facebook gardening group. So much drama in what I thought was a peaceful, calming hobby. Yeah, I see a lot of dictators in a few groups I've been in, but I feel like it's probably due to how crappy the members of the group are, most of the time, rather than them actually wanting to be jerks. I have dated 2 horse girls in my life, and they both ended up very similarly. Arguing with strangers on the internet. Not like usual discussions or anything, just taunting people because you're bored. My mother does this, goes on Facebook pages specifically geared towards things she dislikes, messages them big, long, nasty grams, then blocks them before they can fight back. And yes, my mother is freaking exhausting. This post is funny because I actually made it a goal this year to stop engaging with ridiculous people on the internet. I still have conversations with people, but the moment name calling or belittling begins to happen, I'm out. My mute and block buttons are also used now because I don't care if it's a sign that the other person won the argument if I use it. If you feel validation from winning an argument online, that says more about you than it does me. So I have no problem letting people think that. Kid beauty pageants. I dated a girl in LA who had taken part in beauty pageants going back to when she was a kid. She had a good amount of success with it, and she was most certainly a looker. But man, she was completely crippled with anxiety. Those pageants freaking mess girls up that start young. There's that famous gif of that girl giving a mischievous double chin smile. She ended herself at the age of 16 pretty recently. Those insane pageant moms are living vicariously through their daughters, the way belligerent sports dads live vicariously through their sons at baseball games. Not that it's an excuse for their behavior, but I think the pageant moms and sports dads have massive insecurities about living up to the conventional standards of femininity and masculinity, or are in denial about their own internal insecurities. So they become obsessed with forcing their kids to live up to an ideal they couldn't obtain themselves. And a lot of those kids also aren't going to be able to either, or even want to live up to these incredibly specific standards of masculinity and femininity. I'm pretty sure beauty pageants for little girls and teens just simply shouldn't be a thing. I remember reading an article about a girl that won a beauty pageant, and then it was revealed that she made a spicy video so she would be able to pay for the cost of that pageant. I think they stripped her of the title, and I don't know what happened to her after that. Watching gore or sending gore videos to their friends. I had a roommate like this. He started watching all kinds of gore and pain Olympic videos. It gave him some sort of superiority complex since he became desensitized to gore, and he would always try to get me to watch those videos with him. Likely so I would be grossed out and he wouldn't, as some sort of alpha move or something. Fast forward a month and I found our other roommate lying in a pool of blood on the bathroom floor, barely conscious. Where was our super alpha Chad roommate at the time? He ran out of the room and slept at the neighbors, leaving me to keep our roommate awake while the paramedics showed up and eventually mop up all the blood too. The one roommate lived, and the last I heard, he's doing well. The other guy, he can go screw himself. I'd make a bet that that guy was an average Joe Rogan listener. What about lewd anime figures? I get liking anime, but when your room is full of jailbait anime girls in bathing suits and lewd poses, there's something that's not so chill going on there. Shopping at conventions with the "I have to be able to shamelessly walk into my parents' house with it" rule is surprisingly challenging. There's always so much fun when your previously G-rated, or so far PG-rated, fandom suddenly sprouts a niche offshoot which has a scantily clad anime girl as a central figure. Because you just know that if you ever mention the fandom to anyone ever again, they'll look it up and the first result will be one of those pictures. I used to live in Japan and we would semi-regularly end up at the mall for some food, break a bill, and get change. In Japan, the lowest paper note is about $10. So all the coins would go to ice cream, then with whatever I had left, I would take it to the arcade and try to win the lewdest, crudest anime waifu figure I could. One of my friends thought I actually wanted one and got me a Nami figure as a gift. I wasn't going to not display it, but it was hilarious to explain what the story was every time somebody new came to my house. I kind of want to give my 2 cents on this topic because there was a lot of people going back and forth in the comments on this one. For full transparency, I'm a weeb and I would totally buy one of those lewd figures because no joke, the quality and design of some of those things are insane. They just so happen to be lewd. But I do find it funny that people would consider it a red flag, but a house full of alcoholic paraphernalia, substance paraphernalia, or even weapons wouldn't get as questioned as much as lewd paraphernalia. But I will say, if like a majority of someone's collectibles are these figures and they're lolly based, then I'd say red flag. If their identity is surrounded by Disney, sorry, I said it. I had a cousin who engineered a massive split in the extended family by having her wedding at a Disney World in Florida. She expected everyone to fly there from around the country and stay at the resort itself. A bunch of the family members opted out entirely because of how expensive it was. She ended up feuding with even the family members that did show up but ended up staying at cheaper places in Orlando. I was fortunate enough to be too distant of a relative to even get an invite. I remember seeing an I Am the Jerk post where a bride and groom were both into Disney, so they convinced everyone to fly out to their wedding at Disney and then proceeded to not provide food or drinks for anyone. Instead, they paid like $3,000, It may have been more, I can't remember, to have a guy in a Mickey costume be at their wedding and force their guests to pay for the expensive food/drinks from nearby vendors out of pocket. They were rightly judged. I'd like to add that if a person's personality is centered around any one thing, it's a red flag. Gun bros, substance heads, car people, foodies. Basically, if all you can talk about is one subject and nothing else, that's totally a red flag. Crypto, NFTs, and listening to Andrew Tate. Adults who are really into experiencing child-oriented entertainment in public. The 40-something-year-old guy hanging around Chuck E. Cheese by himself. Not necessarily the odd bird who collects kids' toys, although that is a bit strange to me too. Okay, I'm feeling personally attacked from all the people coming after toys. First off, they're collectibles. But in all seriousness, I think people enjoy collecting things from their childhood or experiencing things from their childhood because it was a simpler time. Because let's be real, when you have to really look at the world and notice how everything is so messed up, it's nice to just go home to things that make you feel nice. What's the worst damage you've caused? I myself may not have caused that much material damage, but a friend of mine told me the other day how one late night he drove a van into a parking garage in a hotel in Barcelona and got stuck under the roof. Upon reversing the car, all of the roof tiles on that level came down in a chain reaction. They buried all the cars that were parked on that level. Obviously, nobody could leave the next morning, which resulted in a lot of compensation claims for missed flights and business meetings, besides all the damage that was done to the garage and many cars. It took a bunch of lawyers and insurance companies 4 years to get it all sorted out. There was a house for sale in my neighborhood that was empty for about 3 months. During that period, a group of friends and I pushed a huge freaking boulder into the deep end of the swimming pool. To be clear, it was poised right on the edge, begging to be pushed. Fast forward after a few months, a friend not involved in the incident tells me that his dad just bought a new house. Only downside is the new house has a boulder in the pool. Oops. Your friend's dad has terrible taste in real estate. He lives in a goddamn boulder stuck in a pool? I erected a tower crane with the base that was improperly engineered. 2 months later, it fell, collapsing one building, damaging 2 others, killing 1 man, injuring the operator, and shutting down the job. I think the ballpark financial end was around $20 million in damages, and it's all undisclosed. I wasn't the reason that there was a failure, but that damage was ridiculous. Trip to Spain with my high school. Beer plus dishwashing soap plus giant fountain in the middle of a town equals chaos. They closed the 4 main roads the next day. They brought in a fire truck from a neighboring town just to clean up the bubbles. Local newspaper blamed it on American tourists. We were Canadian. It freaking blows me away that nobody has done this to the Grand Haven musical fountain yet, which is the size of a football field. On a side note, I did this to our hot tub back when I was a teen, and then blamed it on the neighbor kid. Freaking bubbles everywhere. Clear out to the driveway. Took about 5 times of draining the hot tub to get all the bubbles to stop. I live in GH, and I'm sure it would be absolutely crazy if done right. From what I've heard though is that they have guys up by the pumps when the show is going to keep an eye on things. I'd imagine it would be difficult to pull off successfully. Actually, it would be very possible. You are right. We do have someone on the hill and someone in the stadium. If someone were to dump soap in it, the show would still go on. It has only been canceled like 3 times in 48 years of operation. Plus, we would most likely not notice the soap until it was too late. The nozzles aerate the water too, so the bubbles would be out of control. It just blows me away that no pranksters have tried this. But I am glad at the same time because cleanup would be hell. I think I've done this in my sink when I wash dishes. When I was 11 or 12, I went to visit my sister in Germany. We were getting ready for a dinner party that she was throwing later that night. So we were busily getting the final items we needed at the local market. It was a bit hectic. As it was a little market, they only had these tiny baskets for all of your stuff, and no carts. So she asked me to hold a bottle of champagne. As we were waiting in line, I was being a stupid kid and trying to balance the bottle on the punt, the little divot on the bottom of the bottle, on one finger. Naturally, I screwed it up and dropped the bottle. Anyone who's ever dropped a bottle of champagne knows those things explode with force and a lot of noise. This, in a foreign country, is embarrassing enough as is. But then this guy next to me cries out and collapses on the ground, clutching his knee. Blood is squirting all over the floor and making a big pool. This lady starts screaming and I just stand there not knowing what the hell happened. Turns out a shard of glass had got under the guy's kneecap and severed an artery and some ligaments. He ended up having to go to the hospital that day and have surgery. The cherry on top? Dude was a mountain climber and he was leaving to climb the Matterhorn the next day. My jaw was literally left open after reading this. I think I would hate all children if this happened to me. I used to work at a major appliance warehouse in the summer, and during my first month as a forklift operator, I came around the corner too sharp. The clamp of my lift caught the edge of a refrigerator. I slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The entire stack, about 60 feet high, of 10 $1,000 fridges came crashing down on top of my lift and into a subsequent stack of dishwashers. I was terrified. As the second tower came crashing down, I could hear employees screaming, "Oh no, oh no, oh yeah!" And all the other lift operators came out to watch and laugh at the damages. I proceeded to take the walk of shame to inform the damages manager. Rather than fire me, we all took hunting pictures of me holding up dead dishwashers. Estimated damage, $20,000. I've always thought you have to hit those shelves pretty hard to cause that much damage to knock them over. I used to work at a big warehouse store and these things are usually bolted to the ground. Also, one of our shelves even had a huge dent in it and it didn't fall over. Not sure how that was allowed to fly, just for safety reasons alone. My little brother and I saw someone make and use a Molotov cocktail in some action movie. We thought it would be the coolest thing ever and determined that we could do the same thing and be little action heroes. Our first attempt yielded disappointing results. Somehow, we neglected to realize that bottles had to be made of glass. Once that was sorted out, we tested our new creation on a big oak tree in the clearing about a mile into a forest behind our house. The bottle full of gasoline exploded just like we expected and burned that 100-foot-old oak tree down in less than an hour. We were amazed, but soon became terrified when the flaming limbs began falling off the tree and setting fire to the tall, dry summer grass nearby. The fire quickly spread to nearby trees and we did the only thing we could think of to do: run like hell. That inferno burned for about the next 48 hours until the fire department could finally put it out. It destroyed about 40 acres of forest land, an abandoned house, a part of a horse farm, resulting in some freaked out horses and lots of charred fences. Naturally, we never came forward because we were cowardly little jerks. But we both went to volunteer for fire departments wherever we lived to atone for our stupidity and carelessness. In high school, we used to go out to my friend's farm and attempt totally awesome fire-based destruction every weekend. Our experiment with Molotovs began with my friend setting his jacket on fire by pouring fuel down the back while he was trying to throw one incorrectly. Being set on fire helps people learn. I can't say that I ever messed with fire when I was younger, outside of the occasional fireworks, but when I hear stories about people doing stuff like this, it just makes me wonder, where the hell were your parents? I accidentally blew up a 6,000-gallon tanker truck and demolished the workshop we were in. Damages amounted to about $120,000. Go on. I worked for a company in England that built and repaired tanker trucks. A 4-part compartment truck came in one day for the pipework to be replaced on the rear compartment. I had been told that the tanker was clean and vapor-free, safe to work on. I got under the rear of the truck to cut the bolt head off the bottom connecting flange with an acetylene torch. As I cut the last bolt, the flange gap opened up about 1/8, and a ring of flame came out. Before I had time to react, the rear compartment blew up, which blew out the division into the next compartment and that exploded. All 4 compartments went off within milliseconds of each other, and the front of the tanker blew up and destroyed the truck unit. Luckily, the driver wasn't inside. The top of the tank opened up like petals of a flower and the whole truck jumped in the air. The explosion took the roof off the top of the workshop and the supporting wall that the truck was parked next to. I was actually in the safest place, which was underneath, although I did have to change my undies. Turns out the tank hadn't been cleaned and had just came from dropping off a load. I needn't tell you that that was the last time we ever accepted a vehicle without a vapor-free certification. My father once sold a tanker truck that exploded during a pressure test. Killed a guy, sent shrapnel flying into their brand new test building. He was livid, and he couldn't figure out how the tanker exploded at 10 bar. Turns out the guy who bought it decided that he could get the truck all the way to the test center so it could bring him a few extra bucks, and he used it to deliver gas in a nearby test center. He didn't empty it with water afterwards. Gas plus oxygen equals bang. My friend worked in a seaweed concentrate factory. One of their machines is a big centrifuge, and one day, while spinning really fast, it decided to disintegrate. The machine exploded into 100 fragments of steel, which flew off into random directions, punching holes in the warehouse walls, and one embedded itself in his locker as he was running away from the carnage. Some folks are just lucky. This was one of my biggest fears when I used to work at an old automotive factory job. We had a lot of dudes that didn't pay attention to their test stands, and at any moment, something could break off and cause serious damage. I experienced a couple of fires while I was there. Luckily, we caught them in time. When I was in the 6th grade, I caught a dried up tobacco field on fire. I had a knockoff of one of those Rambo knives, and for a few days I was high on the thought of being an action hero with nothing but my knife, and all the crap stuffed inside the handle. I was trying to show my sister how I could create fire with using just 2 sticks. When she wasn't looking, I snuck out a match and started a small fire, blew out the match and tossed it behind me. Of course, while we were staring at my small, deliberate fire, flames were rapidly spreading all around us. This was right off a busy highway, and suddenly there were folks all over the place swatting the fire with their floor mats. In the end, a huge chunk of the field was completely charred, and to this day, my entire family believes I was able to accomplish all of that by rubbing 2 sticks together. When my brother and I were 4 and 5 respectively, we were being little devils and refusing to go to bed when we were put there. My parents eventually gave up and just went to bed. They were exhausted as they had a dinner party that evening. I promptly went into the lounge and got out my parents' entire cassette tape collection, including the memoirs of my grandmother's escape from Germany in 1939, and proceeded to pull out all of the tape from the cassettes and play with it. My brother, in the meantime, decided that he was hungry and that he wanted a fried egg. In his 5-year-old wisdom, he got out an egg and a frying pan and put them on the stove and turned on an element. Nothing happened with the element that he was looking at, so he turned on another one. This time the heat turned on, and once the pan was hot enough, he started to fry his egg. Unfortunately, the first element he turned on had a wooden chipper board on it, which smoldered until the heat reached my mom's food processor, which promptly started burning and melting. This resulted in a lot of black smoke and fire. My brother toddled down to my parents' bedroom and said, "Daddy, why is there smoke in the kitchen?" And apparently my dad went from horizontal in bed to vertical and halfway down the corridor in about 2 seconds flat. The fire was quite easily put out at the expense of my parents' nice crockery that was soaking in the bucket nearby. My dad just picked it up, threw it, plates, water, and all, on the fire. In the photos of the damages that had to be taken for insurance purposes, there's a sort of twisted black mess of a stove and bench area, and then right in the middle of all of it is a perfectly cooked fried egg. I'm just interested to know if they were able to save those cassette tapes, because losing that Escape from Germany tape must be devastating. Once, while I was in college, there was this cute girl I asked to talk to. On the day results came in, I saw her sitting crying. She failed her papers and would probably be sent back. I went and checked the results. It seemed that she had passed. I ran back to her with the good news. She was very happy. We went back to check the results together. To my horror, I realized I had made a mistake earlier and she had really failed. I was speechless when she boarded the bus in tears. This story is interesting because not all damage needs to be monetary. While in college, I spent several summers working in a salmon cannery in Alaska, and for a few seasons, worked on the overnight cleaning crew. These huge Industrial Revolution-looking behemoths that cut salmon into pieces and put them in cans. The final stage of cleaning these involved climbing into the cavity under the machine where the blade assemblies normally sat. It was removed nightly for sharpening. We used thin wire picks about 12 inches long to get any last fish parts out of the machine. Inside the cavity was a big drive arm that drove the part of the machine that fed the fish to the blades. This arm sat right across your chest as you worked in the cavity, and made for a handy shelf if you needed to set down your pick for a minute. Of course, one day I left my pick on the drive arm. The line mechanic came in and installed the blade assembly, which consisted of about 16 circular blades about 3 times the diameter of a basketball, and which rotated at a ridiculously high RPM as the machine ran. So the mechanic turns on the machine only to hear a god-awful screeching sound as the pick was fed into the blades. It wiped out about half of the blades on the assembly, and with no suitable backup, I took out a quarter of the plant's production capacity for the day. And this was a plant that processed 1 million pounds of very perishable fish per day. The head mechanic who heroically got this thing repaired by the next day pitched me a lot of crap, but never ratted me out. Homemade bomb when I was 9 years old. This all happened with my grandparents' black powder that he used to refill his shotgun shells, a battery-powered clock, a drilled-out light bulb, also battery-powered with a short fuse that attached to an element and duct taped to a 3-foot-wide oak tree. Huge explosion destroying the tree and setting fire to the field behind a nursing home. Tried to put out the fire with my jacket, which resulted in me fanning the flame. State police, helicopters, and fire trucks arrived at the scene. My grandfather smelt the fire on my clothes and dragged my butt out there to fess up to what had happened. Ain't doing that crap again. Lesson freaking learned. Excuse me? Did he not get in trouble? I mean, this kid made a bomb. I know we go pretty easy on children, but I think we should probably keep our eye on some. Not me, but 3 kids went up a hill near where I lived and decided to play with fire. They ended up burning down 40 houses, including mine. Most of the houses were leveled to the ground with nothing left but ashes. The evacuation was quick and many people lost pets and dozens of cars, and other vehicles that were also torched. My neighbors were about 12 Mexicans living in one house, and they didn't believe in banks and lost all of their money, about $7,000. That was in a jar in their basement. It wasn't a rich neighborhood, but many people didn't have insurance, so people became homeless. The kids in question came from a rich neighborhood and from which I hear had no remorse whatsoever. Neither them nor their parents had to pay a single penny. Kids didn't even get a slap on the wrist from what I heard. I was just a kid and my family had to live in a car for a few days before the Red Cross came and helped us with the motel for a couple of months before we could find another place to live. It wasn't a huge town, and with 40 families looking for a place to live, it took a while to find a place. If you're ever looking to give money, the Red Cross is always a good place to give. That and community action. Rich spoiled kids not having any remorse for people that make less money than their families? Color me shocked. I almost choked a family friend to death when I was a kid. We were playing around, wrestling and roughhousing, and I locked my arms around his neck pretending to put him in a sleeper hold. I thought he was just acting when he went all limp, so I just kept clinging on his back with my arm across his throat. I had no idea that I actually choked him unconscious. Only my mom freaking the freak out alerted me to the fact that no, he wasn't pretending, and yes, he was unconscious. I'm sure he lost a few brain cells because of me. And people say wrestling is fake. A friend and I accidentally set a park on fire, which spread to an elementary school and a forest. We were too freaked out to call 911 and ended up doing a tremendous amount of damage. A colleague pushed out the wrong image update to every desktop and computer at Merrill Lynch, taking every single one out for the span of 2 to 3 days. He was fired and sued. I think the company's insurance policy was hit really hard. Conversely, one day while I was at uni, I was wasted and on a midnight snack run to the 24/7 BP service station down the road. I was wandering past a playground and noticed some flickering light in the bank underneath the play equipment. I ran over to take a look, and there were these lines of fire all throughout the park, like somebody had sprayed a kind of accelerant so that it covered a fair amount of it and then lit. I ran around and kicked the dirt all over the fire and put it out, preventing what could have been a tremendous amount of damage. In retrospect, I probably should have called the fire department afterwards in case there was something smoldering, but I was pretty wasted and paranoid. When I was a kid, I went to my cousin's house one weekend. We were playing outside when a neighborhood kid approached us, telling us that the trailer park in the adjacent property was being thrown away by the owners and that we could do whatever we wanted to. After realizing that it was locked, we proceeded to find whatever we could, hammers, crowbars, etc., to smash the locks and get inside. After multiple futile attempts to smash the locks, we started trying to find our way in by ripping giant holes in the door. We ended up screwing this trailer up pretty badly before my aunt came outside in a storming rage and stopped us. After being caught and questioned, the kid that convinced us to do it claimed that he was only doing what he was told and that he had no idea what was going on. It was his parents' trailer. This story unlocked a memory of mine. I was at a friend's house and we were trying to play soccer. Well, he was the goalie and I was trying to score. Well, turns out he wasn't a very good goalie because I probably kicked the best soccer kick of my life and it went directly into his back door, leaving a huge dent in one of the panels. I feared for my life after that, and it was safe to say that any dreams of becoming a soccer star were crushed that day. A friend of mine lived across the street from a courthouse. One night we went on the roof and started launching bananas at the courthouse with a water balloon launcher. They were all landing on the courthouse steps. Then, the most glorious shot I've ever seen. It started out as a normal shot, but it was at the halfway mark, the banana hit an updraft or something. But instead of going down, it went up. And when I say up, I mean up to the glass dome. High velocity bananas plus glass domes don't mix. The banana shattered a glass panel of the dome. All those years of shenanigans, that was the greatest. Back when I was a dumb kid living in Italy, a bunch of friends and I decided to play hide and go seek inside one of the empty villas in our parco. Since the front door was locked and there were bars on the windows, we decided to break a hole in the side of the wall. Once inside, we discovered that laborers who worked for the landlord kept their power tools in there. We went full crazy and completely destroyed everything in that house. One of us came up with the idea if we hit a big water tank outside with the pickaxe, it would explode. After being disappointed by cracking the tank in half with no explosion, we decided the only way we could cause an explosion was to pour gasoline all over the furnace. Before we had a chance to throw the sparkling stick at it, the SPs and Carabinieri showed up to ruin our fun. That's it for this video. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Link at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. It's linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching and we'll see you guys next time.